Strategic silence. Strategic silence is one of the most unnerving yet commanding tools in dark psychology, capable of shifting power dynamics instantly. At its core, it is the deliberate act of withholding words in moments when others expect a reaction. Silence unsettles people because human beings are wired to seek closure and certainty in conversations. When you remain silent, you disrupt that expectation, forcing others to fill the void with their own words, doubts, and vulnerabilities. This subtle absence of response creates an invisible pressure, one that draws attention and authority toward the person who dares to hold it. In tense situations, strategic silence makes others second-guess themselves. A pause after someone's statement can make them wonder if they said something wrong, if they revealed too much, or if you are silently judging their worth. That pause, though empty on the surface, becomes a mirror that reflects their insecurities back at them. Silence does not beg for approval, nor does it scramble to prove itself. It radiates confidence, demanding respect through composure rather than noise. The psychological impact of silence is profound. In negotiations, it can make the other side over-explain or concede more than they intended, simply to break the discomfort. In personal relationships, it can make someone desperate for validation, amplifying your presence in their mind. Even in confrontations, refusing to react verbally can make you appear unshakable, as if their attempts to provoke you have no power. What makes strategic silence so potent is that it leaves others exposed while you remain unreadable. People fear what they cannot interpret, and silence forces them to interpret everything. It is a weapon cloaked in stillness, one that can command respect without a single word. Intentional eye contact. Intentional eye contact is one of the most primal and magnetic forces in human interaction. It cuts deeper than words, bypassing rational thought and striking directly at emotion and instinct. When you hold someone's gaze deliberately, you project certainty, dominance, and presence, qualities that instantly command attention and respect. Humans are hardwired to respond to eye contact because for thousands of years, it's signaled power, intimacy, or threat. To meet someone's eyes without flinching is to tell them, without speaking, that you are unafraid and in control. What makes intentional eye contact so powerful is its ability to amplify whatever energy you choose to project. A calm, steady gaze radiates confidence, while a piercing, unblinking stare can intimidate and unnerve. Prolonged eye contact builds tension, and tension is influence. People instinctively want to resolve it, often by yielding or seeking your approval. In conversations, maintaining eye contact can make others feel exposed, as though you can see past their words into their hidden motives. This silent probing makes people reveal more than they intended. Desperate to ease the psychological weight of your attention, eye contact also intensifies emotional connection. Locking eyes with someone when they share something vulnerable makes them feel deeply seen, creating a bond that words alone could never achieve. On the darker side, it can be used to seduce, manipulate, or overpower, pulling people into your orbit like a hypnotic force they cannot resist. The danger lies in its rarity. Most avoid true eye contact out of discomfort, so when you master it, you stand apart immediately. In a world of averted gazes, the one who dares to look and hold commands the stage without saying a word. Slow, deliberate speech. Slow, deliberate speech is one of the most underestimated psychological weapons in human interaction. In a world where people rush to speak, stumbling over words and filling the air with nervous chatter, the individual who chooses to speak slowly seizes control of the entire room. Each pause becomes a command, each word weighted with significance, each sentence echoing long after it's spoken. When you slow your speech, you project the unshakable confidence of someone who does not need to compete for attention. Attention comes to you. Psychologically, Humans equate speed with insecurity. Fast talking is often seen as nervousness, an attempt to convince or please. By contrast, slow, deliberate speech signals authority and certainty. It forces people to lean in, to hang on to your words, to wait for the thought you have not yet finished. This creates an invisible tension, and tension is where respect is born. The listener feels compelled to give your words more weight because you have given them the gift of space. In moments of confrontation, slow speech can be devastating. A calm, measured response in the face of aggression is far more intimidating than shouting ever could be. It unsettles the aggressor, making them feel that their outburst has no impact, that you are untouchable. In persuasion, deliberate speech seduces the mind, drawing people in like a slow-burning flame they cannot look away from. Every pause becomes a psychological hook, every measured tone a reminder that you are in command. Where others spill words carelessly, you wield language like a blade, cutting deeper with fewer strokes. To speak slowly is to demand respect without ever asking for it. Calm pauses before answering. Calm pauses before answering are a silent display of dominance and control, a subtle psychological tactic that unsettles others while elevating your presence. In a world where people rush to respond, afraid of silence and desperate to prove themselves, the person who takes their time before speaking projects power beyond words. That pause is not emptiness, it is authority. It tells everyone in the room that you are not pressured, not rushed, and not swayed by their expectations. When you pause before answering, you trigger discomfort in others. Human beings crave immediate feedback to feel secure, but your calm hesitation denies them that comfort. In that silence, their mind races. They replay their own words, questioning if they said too much, if they revealed something foolish, or if they've lost your approval. That split second of self-doubt shifts the balance of power in your favor, and it happens without you lifting a finger. Psychologically, the pause gives weight to your words. It makes your eventual answer feel more deliberate, more thoughtful, more commanding. Even if you say little, the silence beforehand primes others to interpret your words as profound. Leaders, interrogators, and master negotiators use this pattern to exert quiet influence, making their voices the center of gravity in any conversation. The emotional effect is undeniable. When you respond too quickly, you seem reactive, uncertain, or eager to please. But when you pause, you radiate composure, making others bend to your tempo. That calm silence between their question and your answer becomes a battlefield they cannot win, because it is your refusal to rush that makes you untouchable. Minimalist body movement. Minimalist body movement is the art of commanding respect through restraint, a dark psychological pattern that radiates strength without a single unnecessary gesture. In a society where people fidget, twitch, and overexpress to fill silence or gain attention, the person who remains still and deliberate instantly stands apart. Every small motion becomes magnified, every subtle shift carries weight, and others are drawn to you because your presence demands focus without effort. The human brain is wired to interpret stillness as control. Predators in the wild move with precision, conserving energy until the perfect moment to strike, and humans subconsciously recognize this same quality in people who move minimally. A person who fidgets communicates nervousness, insecurity, and lack of discipline, while one who sits or stands with calm stillness projects mastery over themselves and their environment. That quiet composure unsettles others because it is so rare. It feels unnatural in a world of constant motion. Minimalist body movement also heightens authority in conversation. A single lean forward becomes more powerful when it is the only shift you make. A steady, controlled hand gesture slices through the air with emphasis because it is deliberate, not desperate. Even maintaining unwavering posture in heated situations creates a psychological imbalance, as though your calm frame cannot be shaken no matter how chaotic the environment becomes. The emotional impact is magnetic. Stillness forces others to lean in, to chase your energy, to wonder what you are holding back. By moving less, you speak louder. Your body becomes a statement of control, and those around you cannot help but respect the discipline that comes from doing less, yet commanding more. Controlled facial expressions. Controlled facial expressions are one of the most chilling and commanding aspects of dark psychology, a quiet force that can bend the dynamics of any interaction. Human beings are wired to search faces for meaning. We read approval, rejection, fear, or warmth in the slightest twitch of a lip or flicker of an eyebrow. When you deny others this emotional feedback, when you master the art of keeping your face calm, unreadable, and deliberate, you instantly gain an advantage that unsettles and fascinates. An expressionless face in moments of tension is unnerving because it strips people of certainty. They cannot tell what you think, how you feel, or whether their words have landed. This lack of feedback forces them inward, creating spirals of doubt and insecurity. In negotiation, your still face makes others reveal more. Desperate to fill the void of emotion they expect to see reflected back at them. In conflict, it projects control, making outbursts and insults bounce off you like they are powerless. The impact is emotional. People crave validation, and when they do not get it, they overcompensate. By refusing to smile too easily, by controlling every flicker of reaction, you make your presence feel scarce, valuable, and unpredictable. Even the smallest intentional change, a faint smirk, a subtle narrowing of the eyes, then lands like a thunderclap, charged with meaning because of the restraint that preceded it. To control your face is to control the battlefield of perception. Where others leak emotion and give away their state of mind, you remain untouchable, forcing respect by leaving them desperate to know what lies behind the mask. Selective acknowledgement. Selective acknowledgement is a powerful psychological tactic that bends social dynamics in your favor by controlling what you choose to validate and what you choose to ignore. At its core, it is the art of deciding whose words, actions, or presence deserve your recognition, and deliberately withholding that recognition from others. Humans are wired to crave acknowledgement. Even the smallest nod, smile, or word of agreement feeds the ego and reinforces their sense of value. When you withhold that gift, it unsettles them, leaving them restless and hungry for your approval. This technique strikes at the heart of human psychology, the need for significance. By acknowledging someone only when it benefits you, you train them, often without their awareness, to seek your recognition. A carefully timed nod or subtle "I see" can make someone feel validated and connected, while your silence or indifference in response to their other efforts can leave them second-guessing their worth. Over time, this uneven pattern of acknowledgement creates a powerful imbalance. People begin to work harder for your attention, bending themselves unconsciously to your standards. In professional settings, selective acknowledgement can elevate your authority. By recognizing only the most valuable contributions and ignoring the trivial, you send a message that your approval must be earned. In personal relationships, it can create tension and desire, drawing others closer as they chase the reward of your rare validation. The emotional impact is profound. People cannot stand to be invisible, and when you selectively acknowledge, you weaponize that fear. They begin to see your attention as a scarce resource, and scarcity breeds obsession. What you choose to validate becomes more valuable simply because it came from you. Unpredictable availability. Unpredictable availability is a psychological pattern that creates both intrigue and respect by disrupting the expectations people place on your time and presence. Human beings instinctively value what feels scarce, and when you make yourself inconsistently accessible, you shift from being ordinary to being desired, pursued, and prioritized. It is not about disappearing completely, but about ensuring that your presence is never taken for granted. When someone cannot predict when you will answer a message, agree to meet, or give them your attention, they unconsciously elevate your worth. The uncertainty keeps them invested because they begin to chase the validation of your response. This pattern preys on the human tendency to crave closure and consistency. By denying them predictable access, you trigger a subtle psychological tension that makes your approval feel like a rare reward rather than an expectation. The effect on respect is immediate. People instinctively respect those who seem difficult to reach, associating it with higher status, busyness, or importance. Leaders and influencers often command reverence simply by managing their availability strategically. When your time feels selective, people work harder to earn it, and when they do receive it, they treat it with more seriousness. Unpredictable availability also shifts power in relationships. By not being constantly accessible, you communicate independence and self-sufficiency. This unsettles those who expect instant responses or constant presence, placing you in control of the interaction. The emotional impact is powerful. They begin to wait for you, adjust to you, and adapt to your rhythm. And the one who sets the rhythm, even through absence, is the one who silently holds the throne. Command presence posture. Command presence posture is the silent language of authority, a psychological force that announces power before a single word leaves your mouth. It is the way you hold yourself, shoulders back, chest open, chin lifted, not in arrogance, but in certainty. This posture radiates dominance and self-assurance, demanding attention the moment you enter a room. Human beings instinctively read body language to measure threat and status, and posture is the first signal our subconscious minds register. The one who stands tall and unshaken is seen as the leader, while those who shrink or slouch unconsciously place themselves in the role of follower. The impact of command presence posture goes deeper than appearances. Standing in this way affects your own psychology, triggering feelings of confidence, strength, and fearlessness. Your body tells your mind that you are in control, and your mind then projects that control outward. Others sense it instantly. They feel it in the way you move slowly instead of rushing, in the way you take up space without apology, in the way your presence seems heavier than anyone else's. In confrontations, this posture is devastating. While others crumble under stress, your frame remains unbent, signaling that no pressure can break you. In negotiations, it makes you appear non-negotiable, someone whose value is unquestionable. Even in casual social settings, command presence posture pulls eyes toward you, as though people are instinctively searching for that anchor in the room. It is not loud, it does not boast, and it does not beg. It simply exists as an unspoken declaration of power. Posture becomes identity, and identity becomes respect. Disarming calmness under stress. Disarming calmness under stress is a psychological weapon that separates the powerful from the powerless. In moments where others crack, panic, or lash out, the individual who remains composed radiates in almost supernatural control. It is not the absence of pressure, but the refusal to display it that commands instant respect. People instinctively gravitate toward calmness in chaos because it signals strength, certainty, and leadership when everyone else is unraveling. When you stay calm under stress, you destabilize those who expect you to falter. Enemies become frustrated because their attempts to provoke or break you yield nothing. Competitors hesitate because your serenity suggests you hold hidden knowledge or strength they cannot see. Even allies look to you as an anchor because your composure provides safety and assurance when their own emotions are spinning out of control. The psychology runs deep. Stress is contagious, but so is calmness. When your heartbeat does not rise, when your breathing stays steady, others begin to mirror your state, subconsciously surrendering to your tempo. You gain control not only of yourself, but of the emotional climate of the entire situation. This is why interrogators, negotiators, and leaders use calmness as a shield and a weapon. It throws others off balance, making them reveal more, concede faster, or question their own position. There is something unsettling about a person who does not react under fire. It makes them seem untouchable, as if nothing can reach them. That aura of invulnerability creates both respect and intimidation, because calmness in the face of chaos is not natural. It is power made visible in its most silent form. Sparse compliments. Sparse compliments are a psychological weapon that turns simple words into powerful emotional triggers. Unlike constant praise, which quickly loses its value and becomes background noise, rare and carefully chosen compliments hit like lightning, unexpected, electrifying, and unforgettable. Human beings are addicted to validation, and when it is withheld, they crave it even more. By offering praise sparingly, you transform your words into a scarce commodity, something others instinctively chase after. The brilliance of sparse compliments lies in the way they rewire desire. When someone never knows when or if they will receive your approval, their brain enters a cycle of anticipation and tension, much like a gambler pulling the lever of a slot machine. That uncertainty makes your praise exponentially more valuable, creating a psychological dependency. One compliment, delivered at the perfect moment, can overshadow weeks of indifference, leaving the recipient hooked on trying to earn another. This tactic also carries an undertone of power. By refusing to hand out praise freely, you establish yourself as someone whose recognition must be earned. When you finally choose to compliment, it feels like a gift, not an obligation. Your words suddenly carry the weight of authority, and those who receive them feel elevated, seen, and validated in a way they cannot easily forget. The emotional punch of a sparse compliment is unforgettable. It lingers, echoing in the mind long after it's spoken, making the person replay it again and again. They begin to measure themselves against your rare approval, tying their sense of worth to your unpredictable recognition. In that subtle scarcity, respect, and even obsession is born. Intense listening without interruption. Intense listening without interruption is one of the most disarming and commanding psychological techniques a person can wield. In a society where people are desperate to be heard but constantly cut off, the one who listens with unwavering focus becomes both unsettling and magnetic. It is not passive listening. It is deliberate, concentrated attention that feels so rare it borders on uncomfortable. When you let someone speak freely without breaking in, you shift the entire power dynamic of the interaction. The effect is profound. As they talk, they begin to reveal more than they intended. The silence of your presence draws out their words like a vacuum, and their own need to fill that silence compels them to over-explain, confess, or expose hidden truths. Without interruption, your gaze and stillness signal that you are in control, that you are absorbing everything. This creates an emotional intensity, making them feel both seen and vulnerable at the same time. Psychologically, this technique exploits a deep human insecurity, the fear of not being understood. When you give someone your full, uninterrupted attention, they feel validated, almost intoxicated by the rare experience of being truly heard. Yet beneath that validation is a growing sense of dependence. They associate you with relief, respect, even admiration, because you give them what so few others can. But the darker edge lies in what you gain. While they speak endlessly, you remain unreadable. You reveal nothing, but you gather everything. By withholding your words, you maintain power, while they hand over information, emotion, and trust. Intense listening is not weakness. It is psychological dominance cloaked in patience. It makes them chase your approval, while you silently control the entire exchange. Holding space in conversation. Holding space in conversation is a darkly powerful technique that commands respect without force, using silence, presence, and patience as tools of influence. It is the art of creating an invisible container where others feel compelled to speak, reveal, and even confess, while you remain calm, grounded, and unshaken. Most people rush to fill every silence, desperate to prove themselves or ease tension, but the one who holds space makes the silence sacred, turning it into a psychological arena where others lay down their truths. This pattern works because human beings fear emptiness in dialogue. When you refuse to rush, your presence becomes amplified, and the silence you hold presses against them like a weight. They begin to over-explain, to justify, to spill details they never intended to share, just to break the stillness. Meanwhile, your calm presence radiates control, giving the impression that you are not only listening, but seeing beyond their words into their unspoken motives. Holding space is not passive, it is active restraint. Your eye contact, your steady posture, your subtle nods, all signal that you are in control of the moment, even without speaking. The emotional effect is profound. People feel both validated and vulnerable in your silence. They crave your reaction, but you deny it, which makes them crave it even more. In negotiations, this makes opponents fold. In relationships, it creates deep attachment. In leadership, it breeds loyalty and fear simultaneously. By holding space, you shift the power dynamic effortlessly. You make others feel the weight of your presence while revealing the weight of their own insecurities, and they will remember that moment long after the words are forgotten. Reluctance to overshare. Reluctance to overshare is a subtle yet formidable psychological pattern that creates an aura of mystery and authority. In a world where most people spill their thoughts, feelings, and stories without hesitation, the one who holds back instantly stands apart. By revealing less than expected, you force others to lean in, to guess, to wonder, to try to read between the lines. That withholding is not weakness, it is power. It tells the world that your mind and your life are not open books to be consumed by anyone who asks. Psychologically, people equate scarcity with value. The less you reveal, the more significant every detail becomes. If you rarely speak about yourself, even the smallest disclosure feels like a privilege to those listening. This scarcity builds intrigue, drawing people closer, making them invest more effort to win your trust. Meanwhile, those who overshare quickly lose their mystique, exposing weaknesses and giving others ammunition to exploit. Reluctance to overshare also establishes control in conversations. By listening more and revealing less, you shift the focus onto others, making them carry the weight of disclosure. They end up telling you more than they intended, exposing their vulnerabilities while learning little about yours. This imbalance plants you in the position of power, the observer, not the exposed. The emotional effect is profound. People feel compelled to chase after what is withheld. They respect what they cannot easily access. Your silence becomes magnetic, your restraint a form of dominance. While others waste their power in endless self-revelation, you command respect through the mystery of what you choose not to say. Subtle mirroring of body language. Subtle mirroring of body language is one of the most disarming psychological tactics, a quiet force that slips beneath conscious awareness and forges an instant sense of connection. At its core, it is the art of reflecting another person's posture, gestures, or movements in a way so natural they never realize it's happening. Humans are biologically wired to trust those who appear similar to them, and when you mirror someone's body language, you tap directly into that instinct, making them feel understood without a single word being spoken. The effect is magnetic. When someone leans forward and you lean in moments later, it signals engagement. When they cross their arms and you eventually cross yours, it suggests alignment. These subtle reflections bypass logic and stir emotion, tricking the subconscious into believing there is harmony and rapport. the person feels comfortable, validated, even drawn to you, as if you are operating on the same wavelength. What makes subtle mirroring so powerful is its invisibility. Done skillfully, it doesn't register in the conscious mind. It registers in the body, in the unspoken realm of intuition and feeling. People walk away from interactions with master mirroring practitioners saying, "I don't know why, but I just felt so comfortable around them." That comfort, however, is manufactured, not accidental. Yet beneath its warmth lies manipulation. By creating the illusion of similarity, mirroring can lower defenses and open doors of trust, making people easier to persuade or influence. They lean closer without realizing why, they reveal more without questioning, and they feel safer than they should. In silence and subtlety, this pattern whispers, "You belong with me." Unwavering tone of voice. An unwavering tone of voice is one of the most commanding psychological levers a person can pull because it projects unshakable certainty and authority in any situation. Voices that rise and fall with nervous energy betray insecurity, while voices that hold steady cut through the air with dominance. When your tone remains consistent, calm, firm, and grounded, you send an unmistakable signal. You are not rattled, not persuaded by pressure, and not in need of approval. Humans instinctively respond to vocal stability. In moments of chaos or conflict, the person who speaks with a controlled and unwavering tone becomes the anchor others gravitate toward. It conveys a sense of leadership, even if you say very little. That steadiness taps into primal instincts. Our ancestors trusted those whose voices carried composure during danger and distrusted those who cracked or faltered. The same psychology operates today. In persuasion, an unwavering tone makes your words feel non-negotiable, as though what you say is fact rather than opinion. It can make even the boldest opponent hesitate, because while they raise their voice, your refusal to match their volatility makes them appear emotional and weak by comparison. Your calm firmness becomes a mirror that magnifies their instability. The emotional impact is subtle but powerful. People feel safer around those who sound in control, yet at the same time, they feel the weight of your dominance. Your tone becomes a constant reminder that you will not be swayed or shaken. Where others fluctuate with doubt or fear, you remain steady, and that steadiness commands a respect that words alone can never achieve. Controlled laughter. Controlled laughter is one of the most unsettling yet captivating dark psychology patterns because it manipulates one of the most human behaviors, humor, into a weapon of influence. Most people laugh loudly, nervously, or excessively in an attempt to be liked, to dissolve tension, or to seek approval, but the one who laughs with restraint, who lets amusement drip slowly through a smirk, a low chuckle, or a sudden sharp burst, holds power over the entire atmosphere. Controlled laughter communicates that you are not laughing because you must, but because you choose to, and that choice forces others to lean into your frame of authority. Psychologically, laughter is contagious. When you regulate yours, you control the energy of the room. A measured laugh at someone's joke makes them crave more of your approval, while withholding it entirely can quietly diminish their confidence. A delayed laugh can make others question whether what they said was truly funny, pulling them into your psychological tempo. Even a subtle, restrained chuckle in moments of tension can destabilize others, making them feel as though you see through the situation with clarity they cannot match. Controlled laughter also triggers curiosity. People wonder what you find amusing, what hidden knowledge you're withholding, why you're not reacting like everyone else. That mystery makes your presence magnetic. In darker uses, it can humiliate or unsettle, making someone feel small or foolish without you ever having to insult them directly. The emotional effect is powerful. Others interpret your laugh as a signal of value, as if earning it means they've achieved something rare. When you ration laughter, you make it currency, and in doing so, you make yourself the one everyone wants to impress. Sparing use of touch. Sparing use of touch is a darkly powerful psychological tool because it transforms something ordinary into something extraordinary. Human beings are wired to crave physical connection. Handshakes, pats on the back, hugs, or casual touches on the arm all release oxytocin, the bonding hormone that fosters trust and closeness. But when touch is used sparingly, it becomes scarce, and scarcity always amplifies value. The rare brush of your hand, the brief clasp of a shoulder, or the occasional handshake suddenly carries more weight than endless casual contact ever could. The psychology is primal. Touch signals acceptance, safety, and intimacy. But when it is withheld, people grow desperate for it. They begin to crave your approval, wondering when or if you will bridge that physical gap again. This makes every touch deliberate, charged with meaning, and deeply impactful. When you do touch, it feels intentional, as if bestowed with purpose, and that makes others feel chosen, validated, and respected. At the same time, sparing use of touch creates a subtle imbalance of power. Those who use touch constantly appear needy or intrusive, while those who withhold it project control. The message is clear: you are selective with who earns your closeness. This selectivity makes people try harder to win that rare gesture, deepening their respect for you. In darker applications, sparing touch can be used to manipulate emotions, igniting desire, dependency, or loyalty with the smallest physical act. A touch withheld creates longing. A touch granted creates devotion. It is not the frequency of contact that commands respect, but the discipline to make every gesture feel intentional, scarce, and unforgettable. Interrupting with precision. Interrupting with precision is a psychological maneuver that can instantly shift control in a conversation and establish dominance without overt aggression. Most interruptions are clumsy, fueled by impatience or insecurity, and they spark irritation or resentment. But when executed with exact timing, a well-placed interruption slices through dialogue like a blade, seizing the spotlight and forcing others to recalibrate around your presence. It is not about talking over someone aimlessly. It is about choosing the exact moment to cut in so that your words land with undeniable authority. The power of precise interruption lies in its disruption. Humans are rhythm-driven creatures. Conversations flow like music, and we expect that rhythm to be respected. When you break it with precision, you shock the mind, redirecting all attention onto you. The speaker, momentarily thrown off balance, subconsciously cedes power as the audience shifts focus to your words. That instant of disruption, if delivered with calm confidence, redefines who is leading the interaction. This technique is especially potent in group dynamics. The one who interrupts at the perfect moment, just before a weak argument concludes, just as a pause begins, or right when emotion peaks, establishes themselves as the voice that must be heard. Others fall into step, often without realizing the subtle takeover that just occurred. The emotional effect on the target is equally important. Some feel intimidated, others intrigued, but nearly all feel the weight of your presence. Precision makes the difference between rudeness and command. Done clumsily, it makes you a nuisance. Done masterfully, it makes you unforgettable, the person whose words cut through noise and demanded respect the moment they arrived. Strategic withdrawal. Strategic withdrawal is a psychological maneuver that commands respect by transforming absence into power. It is not the act of retreating out of weakness, but the deliberate choice to step back at the exact moment your presence is most anticipated. Human beings are wired to notice what disappears, and when you suddenly pull away, you create a vacuum that magnifies your importance. The silence of your absence echoes louder than any words you could have spoken. This pattern exploits the scarcity principle. What is consistently available loses value, but what is rare becomes coveted. By withdrawing strategically, whether from a conversation, a relationship, or a negotiation. You force others to confront the weight of your absence. They replay interactions in their minds, questioning what went wrong, whether they offended you, or what they must do to regain your presence. That mental loop is where your influence takes root. Psychologically, strategic withdrawal shifts control. When you leave, you disrupt their rhythm and deny them closure. Humans hate unfinished business, and your exit becomes the unresolved thread they cannot stop tugging at. This makes them more likely to bend, to compromise, or to chase after you, elevating your status in their eyes. Emotionally, it is a devastating tactic. In relationships, withdrawal can make someone feel desperate for your return, heightening their dependence. In leadership, it can remind others that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. What unsettles them most is the unpredictability. They never know if, when, or how you will reappear. And in that uncertainty, respect grows because they realize your presence is not theirs to command. It is yours to grant. Deliberate withholding of approval. Deliberate withholding of approval is a psychological pattern that can hook people into chasing your validation with relentless energy. Approval is one of the most addictive currencies in human interaction. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek it, from parents, teachers, peers, and later, society. When you deliberately deny it, when you resist giving the nod, the smile, or the reassuring word others expect, you trigger a hunger in them that grows more desperate the longer it goes unfed. The power of this pattern lies in contrast. Most people hand out approval too freely, trying to please, trying to be liked. But when your approval is rare, it becomes valuable. A simple well done from you carries 10 times the weight of endless praise from others. People begin to bend themselves toward your standards, consciously and unconsciously adjusting their words, actions, and even personalities to earn what you are withholding. Psychologically, this taps into one of the deepest human drives, the need for recognition. When someone feels they cannot win your approval easily, they start to obsess over it. They replay conversations, question their behavior, and return to you seeking another chance. In relationships, this creates emotional dependence. In leadership, it fuels loyalty. In negotiations, it forces people to over-deliver, hoping to finally unlock your acknowledgement. What makes deliberate withholding so emotionally charged is the tension it creates. People feel exposed, wondering why they weren't enough, and in that questioning, they hand you power. Approval becomes not just a compliment, but a prize. By controlling it, you control them, not with cruelty, but with scarcity, the most intoxicating form of influence. Understated self-praise. Understated self-praise is a psychological art form that commands respect without triggering the resistance that overt bragging often does. Instead of loudly proclaiming achievements, it plants subtle seeds of superiority that others discover on their own. It is the quiet, almost casual acknowledgement of your abilities or accomplishments that makes people lean in, curious, impressed, and unable to dismiss you. The key lies not in boasting, but in weaving your strength into conversation so naturally that it feels undeniable, even unintentional. Psychologically, people distrust those who oversell themselves. Bragging creates suspicion, envy, and pushback. But when self-praise is understated, it bypasses defenses. A passing mention of the late nights you worked to complete a major project, a small detail about someone influential who sought your advice, or an offhand reference to something you mastered shifts perception without you ever demanding recognition. It makes others draw the conclusion themselves, and conclusions people reach on their own feel like truths they cannot reject. This technique also builds intrigue. By not shining a spotlight on your accomplishments, you create a sense that there is more beneath the surface, more successes, more stories, more depth than you're revealing. Others begin to wonder what else you're holding back, and this curiosity turns into respect. Understated self-praise makes your competence feel effortless, as though excellence is simply your baseline. The emotional effect is subtle yet powerful. Instead of triggering envy, you inspire admiration. Instead of sounding arrogant, you appear confident but grounded. It is this balance that commands attention. You do not need to shout about your worth, because your quiet confidence speaks louder than words ever could. Controlled anger display. Controlled anger display is one of the most striking psychological tactics for commanding respect, because it unleashes raw emotion with precision instead of chaos. Unlike blind rage, which makes someone look weak and out of control, controlled anger is intentional, measured, and terrifyingly effective. It is the art of showing just enough fire to signal strength while maintaining complete composure beneath the surface. This balance creates an aura of danger that forces others to take you seriously. Humans instinctively respond to anger. It is primal, tied to survival, and impossible to ignore. When someone raises their voice in fury, people might dismiss it as loss of control, but when anger is delivered calmly, with unwavering tone and sharp intensity, it becomes unforgettable. A quiet voice filled with restrained rage cuts deeper than shouting ever could. It sends a chilling message. I have the power to explode, but I choose not to. That choice alone demands respect. In conflicts, controlled anger shifts the dynamic instantly. The person across from you feels the heat of your words, but also the weight of your discipline, realizing they are up against someone who cannot be provoked into recklessness. In leadership, it can silence a room, making followers hang onto every word with heightened attention. In relationships, it sparks fear and fascination, leaving the other person both unsettled and drawn closer. What makes controlled anger so potent is its unpredictability. It leaves people wondering where your boundaries truly lie and what might happen if they push further. That uncertainty lingers, embedding your presence in their mind as someone not to be underestimated. Boundary enforcement without apology. Boundary enforcement without apology is one of the clearest demonstrations of self-respect and psychological dominance. Most people, when setting limits, soften their words with excuses or apologies, signaling that they fear disapproval. But when you enforce a boundary firmly and unapologetically, you send a message that your time, energy, and values are non-negotiable. This shift in tone forces others to recognize your worth, whether they like it or not. Humans instinctively test boundaries to gauge power. When you hesitate, over-explain, or apologize for saying no, you teach others that your limits can be bent. But when you deliver a firm refusal without justification, you radiate authority. The absence of apology removes any space for negotiation. It tells them that your decision is final, and their approval is irrelevant. This denial of permission unsettles people because they realize they cannot manipulate or guilt you into compliance. Psychologically, unapologetic boundaries trigger respect, even in those who feel frustrated by them. People are drawn to strength, and the ability to hold your ground without wavering is rare. It conveys independence, making others instinctively see you as someone who commands rather than chases validation. In relationships, it creates polarity. Others begin to adjust themselves around you rather than expecting you to bend for them. The emotional weight of unapologetic enforcement is powerful. It strips away the illusion of control others think they have over you. It makes them confront the reality that access to your time, energy, or emotions is a privilege, not a right. And the one who can draw the line without apology is the one others cannot help but respect. Expectation of compliance. Expectation of compliance is a dark psychological pattern that bends people to your will without force, using nothing but the weight of assumption. At its core, it is the silent belief and projection that others will follow your lead, obey your direction, or respect your request simply because you expect them to. Humans are deeply influenced by authority cues, and when someone radiates the quiet certainty that compliance is natural, Most people submit without ever questioning why. This works because people are conditioned from childhood to respond to authority figures, parents, teachers, leaders, who issue commands with an air of inevitability. When you project that same expectation, you bypass negotiation and shift directly into control. You don't ask timidly, you don't over-explain, and you don't leave space for refusal. Instead, you behave as though agreement is the only logical outcome, and the other person feels the pull to fulfill that unspoken script. Psychologically, compliance expectation leverages social pressure. Saying no feels uncomfortable because it disrupts harmony, creates tension, and risks conflict. When you appear unshaken in your expectation, people often comply simply to avoid the discomfort of resistance. Even in group settings, others look around, see your certainty, and fall in line because your assumption creates momentum that few are willing to break. The emotional effect is subtle but profound. People may not even realize they've yielded until long after the moment has passed. In negotiations, it extracts concessions without argument. In relationships, it conditions loyalty. In leadership, it creates followers who act as if obedience is natural. Expectation itself becomes a command, and respect flows to the one who assumes it without doubt. Sustained stillness. Sustained stillness is a weapon of presence, a dark psychological pattern that unsettles people by denying them the comfort of movement or reaction. In a society addicted to fidgeting, restless gestures, and constant distraction, the person who remains completely still radiates an almost unnatural aura of control. Stillness is power because it suggests total composure, an unshakable confidence that nothing can disturb. When you hold your body in absolute calm, your posture steady, your eyes focused, your movements minimal, you create a gravitational pull that forces others to notice you. The human mind equates motion with nervous energy. People tap their feet, adjust their clothes, or shift their weight when they feel unsure or weak. By contrast, stillness signals dominance. Predators in the wild remain perfectly motionless before striking, and that primal association lingers in the human psyche. When someone refuses to move, it triggers unease in others because they cannot read your intentions. That unreadability makes them feel exposed, as though every twitch and stumble of their own body is being silently observed and judged. In conversations, sustained stillness amplifies your words. Each gesture becomes magnified, each tilt of the head weighted with meaning, each pause thick with tension. In confrontations, it is devastating. Your opponent flails, gestures, raises their voice while you remain unmoved, and in that contrast, their weakness becomes glaring. The emotional impact is profound. Stillness feels unnatural because it resists the rhythm of ordinary behavior. It creates a silence of the body that demands others adapt to you. People project their fears and desires into that silence, giving you power without you lifting a finger. Sustained stillness makes you the immovable center in a chaotic world, giving less detail than expected. Giving less detail than expected is a dark psychological tactic that creates intrigue, authority, and respect by weaponizing scarcity in conversation. Most people feel compelled to explain themselves, to provide context, to fill every silence with detail so others will understand and approve of them. But when you deliberately withhold information, offering only fragments or essentials, you flip the dynamic. Your words become scarce, and scarcity always increases value. Psychologically, this pattern triggers curiosity and tension. The human brain craves closure. It wants the full story, the missing pieces, the certainty that comes from detail. When you give less than expected, you deny that closure, leaving the other person hooked, analyzing and replaying your words long after you've stopped speaking. This transforms even the simplest statement into something that feels significant because they must work to interpret it. In negotiations or confrontations, brevity becomes a weapon. A vague but confident answer can make others second-guess their assumptions, filling the silence with their own anxieties or over-explanations. In personal dynamics, it creates a mysterious aura, making you seem unpredictable, self-contained, and above the need for validation. The less you reveal, the more others project onto you, often imagining greater depth, intelligence, or power than you actually disclose. The emotional effect is potent. People respect those who do not scramble to justify themselves because it signals certainty and self-assurance. Each withheld detail becomes a boundary in itself, telling the world, you do not owe anyone an explanation. By saying less, you force others to lean in, to question, to respect the weight of what you chose not to reveal. In silence and omission, you command the room. Measured movements. Measured movements are a silent display of power, a psychological signal that separates the controlled from the chaotic. Every gesture you make communicates something about your state of mind, and when your body moves slowly, deliberately, and with purpose, it radiates dominance and composure. People instinctively associate stillness and precision with strength, because predators in the wild move with calculated efficiency while prey twitches and fidgets. When your movements are measured, you project the aura of someone who is never rushed, never desperate, and always in control. Psychologically, erratic or excessive movements signal nervousness, insecurity, or lack of confidence. Rapid hand gestures, shifting feet, or restless fidgeting reveal vulnerability and unease. In contrast, when you move with restraint, turning your head slowly, lifting your hand deliberately, adjusting your posture with precision, you create the impression of authority. Others begin to mirror your tempo, unconsciously slowing down to match your calm, controlled rhythm. Measured movements also heighten the impact of everything you do. A subtle glance, a small hand gesture, or a single step forward becomes magnified in meaning because of the discipline behind it. This scarcity of motion makes your actions feel intentional, as if each one carries weight and significance. Even something as simple as leaning back in your chair or folding your hands slowly can silence a room and draw eyes toward you. The emotional effect is profound. People feel unsettled by those they cannot read, and measured movements deny them the comfort of predictability. Where others waste energy in restless displays, you conserve it, channeling power into every calculated motion. To move with precision is to dominate without speaking, to embody authority in the very way you exist in space. Delayed responses. Delayed responses are a psychological weapon cloaked in patience, a subtle act that transforms ordinary interactions into power plays. In a world addicted to instant replies, the one who waits to respond creates tension, mystery, and dominance. When you delay, you signal that you are not at the mercy of urgency, that your time and attention are scarce, and that others must earn access to them. This simple act forces people to feel the weight of your presence, even in your absence. Psychologically, humans crave immediacy because it reassures them of their importance. A quick response signals eagerness, availability, and often neediness. But when you withhold that instant gratification, you flip the dynamic. Suddenly, they are the ones waiting, replaying their words, questioning whether they said too much, too little, or something wrong. That silence between stimulus and reply is where control lives, because it makes the other person invest emotionally while you remain untouched. The emotional effect is powerful. A delayed response can spark anxiety, anticipation, and even obsession. In relationships, it makes your approval feel scarce, and scarcity always magnifies value. In negotiations, it unsettles opponents, making them reconsider their position before you've even spoken. In leadership, it creates the aura of someone who chooses their words carefully, whose time is too valuable to waste on immediacy. When you finally do respond, your words carry amplified weight, not because of what you say, but because of how long others waited to hear it. Delayed responses are not laziness, they are deliberate control. You teach others that you cannot be rushed, that your rhythm sets the tempo, and that their desire for your reply is proof of your power. Asking piercing questions. Asking piercing questions is a dark psychological tactic that slices through surface-level conversations and forces people to confront truths they often try to hide. Most interactions stay safe, shallow, and predictable. People exchange pleasantries, skirt around uncomfortable topics, and reveal only what keeps them secure. But when you ask a question that strikes directly at the heart of someone's motives, fears, or contradictions, you seize control of the dynamic instantly. It unsettles, disarms, and commands respect because few have the audacity to cut so deeply. Psychologically, piercing questions disrupt comfort zones. They bypass rehearsed answers and social masks, pulling raw honesty to the surface. Questions like, "Why do you really feel that way?" or "What are you afraid will happen if you fail?" demand vulnerability, and the person confronted with them cannot escape the weight of being truly seen. In that moment, you establish dominance, not through aggression, but through insight. The emotional power of such questions lies in the silence they create, the pause before someone answers, the flicker of discomfort in their eyes, the hesitation in their voice. These are signs that you've touched something real, and because humans crave validation, they often end up oversharing in response, revealing secrets, insecurities, or desires they didn't plan to share. Those who master piercing questions are perceived as more intelligent, more perceptive, almost dangerous in their ability to see through facades. It makes people tread carefully around you, knowing you can expose them with a single inquiry. Respect comes not from the answer itself, but from the fear and awe of the fact that you dared to ask what others would not. Speaking last in groups. Speaking last in groups is a psychological strategy that transforms you into the voice of authority without ever needing to demand it. Most people rush to speak first, eager to prove themselves, to be heard, or to secure approval. But the one who waits, who listens carefully, who holds back until everyone else has revealed their thoughts, instantly sets themselves apart. By speaking last, you gain the advantage of knowledge. You hear every perspective, every mistake, every insecurity laid bare before you. And when your turn finally comes, your words carry the weight of finality, shaping the conclusion rather than being lost in the noise. The silence before you speak builds tension. Others begin to wonder what you are thinking, why you remain quiet, and what judgment you will ultimately deliver. That curiosity heightens anticipation, and anticipation gives your words gravity. When you finally do speak, people lean in because they expect importance. Even a simple statement delivered at the end feels like the closing argument, the decisive word that others subconsciously accept as truth. Psychologically, this tactic places you in the role of leader, even if you hold no official title. In negotiations, speaking last forces others to reveal their positions before you, allowing you to craft your response with precision. In social groups, it creates mystery and draws respect, as others begin to see you as the one who doesn't scramble for attention but commands it naturally. The emotional effect is undeniable. While others scatter their energy in haste, you conserve yours, releasing it only when it matters most. Speaking last makes you the final echo in people's minds, the voice that lingers, shaping decisions long after the discussion ends. Breaking eye contact strategically. Breaking eye contact strategically is a psychological pattern that transforms a simple glance into a weapon of control. Most people think power lies in holding eye contact, but the real mastery is knowing when to release it. By breaking your gaze at the precise moment, you dictate the rhythm of the interaction, leaving the other person caught in the tension of what feels unfinished. This disruption unsettles them because the human mind craves continuity. When you deny it, they chase it. When you hold eye contact too long, it can feel aggressive or predictable. But when you lock in just enough to command their attention, then abruptly shift your gaze, you send a layered message. I see you, I acknowledge you, but I am not bound to you. It is both connection and rejection at once, a push and pull that makes others crave your attention even more. That fleeting withdrawal of your eyes creates scarcity, and scarcity amplifies value. Psychologically, breaking eye contact at the right moment destabilizes certainty. It forces the other person to wonder what captured your attention, why you disengaged, and whether they lost something they had. In arguments, this move can strip power from an opponent by showing you are unimpressed. In seduction, it builds tension by making your attention feel like a prize they must earn. The emotional charge is undeniable. People are addicted to being seen, and when you abruptly stop seeing them, it stings. Yet that sting plants respect, because it shows you are not desperate to hold their gaze. The power lies not in staring endlessly, but in knowing when to look away and make them chase the return of your eyes. Restricting access to your time. Restricting access to your time is one of the most potent ways to command respect, because time is the most valuable resource you possess. When you make yourself too available, people subconsciously devalue you, treating your presence as ordinary and easily obtained. But when you limit access, when your attention feels rare and difficult to secure, you instantly elevate your worth in the eyes of others. Scarcity breeds desire, and restricted time becomes a symbol of power. Psychologically, humans are wired to chase what they cannot easily have. When you are always present, you become predictable, and predictability dulls respect. But when people must compete for your time, when they feel you are not easily reached, they begin to see every interaction with you as a privilege. This shift changes how they speak to you, how they behave around you, and how much effort they exert to earn your presence. Restricting time also forces others into your frame. Instead of you rearranging your life to meet them, they must adjust to your schedule, your boundaries, your availability. This subtle reversal establishes dominance, signaling that you are not desperate for connection or approval. In fact, you project the opposite, that your life is full, that your priorities are clear, and that their access must be earned. The emotional effect is magnetic. People begin to anticipate and savor the moments they do have with you, while wondering what you are doing when they cannot reach you. Their imagination fills the gaps, often painting you as even more valuable than you claim to be. By restricting access to your time, you make your presence unforgettable, turning scarcity into influence and absence into power. Redirecting conversations. Redirecting conversations is a psychological maneuver that shifts control of dialogue from others back to you without ever appearing forceful. Most people allow conversations to drift aimlessly or let dominant personalities dictate the flow, but the one who can subtly steer discussions toward their chosen path exerts quiet authority. It is not about talking the loudest, but about guiding the current so that others end up swimming in waters you've chosen. Psychologically, this tactic works because people crave structure in interactions. When you redirect a conversation smoothly by asking a question, reframing a point, or introducing a sharper focus, you become the anchor that holds the group together. Instead of resisting, others often follow your lead, relieved that someone has taken control. This influence builds respect, because leadership in dialogue mirrors leadership in life. Those who steer conversations appear to steer reality itself. The emotional effect of redirection is powerful. Imagine someone prying into your personal life, and instead of answering, you smoothly shift to a topic that exposes their interests, values, or insecurities. Not only have you protected your boundaries, but you've also placed them in the vulnerable position of disclosure. Or in a group, you redirect chatter into deeper territory, forcing people to engage more meaningfully while you set the stage as the one who defines the tone. Done with finesse, redirecting does not feel like control, it feels like natural flow. Yet beneath the surface, it is power. Those who can guide conversations without resistance command respect because they demonstrate mastery not only over words but over the unseen psychology that governs them. Maintaining mystery. Maintaining mystery is one of the most magnetic psychological tactics, a force that commands respect by refusing to give people complete access to who you are. In a world where most overshare their lives, their emotions, their opinions, the person who holds back becomes irresistible. Mystery creates tension, and tension fuels curiosity. When people cannot fully predict or define you, they are drawn deeper, trying to solve the puzzle of your character. That constant guessing gives you power, because the unknown is always more compelling than the obvious. Humans crave certainty, yet they are fascinated by ambiguity. When you maintain mystery, you deny the comfort of predictability. You don't reveal every thought, you don't answer every question directly, and you don't expose every layer of your emotions. Instead, you allow silence, you offer fragments, you create gaps that others desperately try to fill with their imagination. And what they imagine often holds more weight than anything you could have revealed outright. Mystery amplifies authority. In leadership, the figure who doesn't explain every move appears more strategic, more calculating, more powerful. In relationships, the person who doesn't bare their soul immediately becomes magnetic, sparking desire through scarcity. In negotiations, mystery forces the other side to second guess, to wonder what you know that they don't, making them cautious and easier to influence. The emotional impact of mystery is intoxicating. It leaves people restless, replaying your words, analyzing your silences, projecting their fantasies onto the space you refuse to fill. By withholding yourself, you become larger than life, commanding attention not through what you give, but through what you refuse to reveal. Not rushing to fill silence. Not rushing to fill silence is one of the most unsettling yet commanding psychological tactics because it flips the dynamic of discomfort. Most people panic when silence enters a conversation, scrambling to fill it with words, jokes, or nervous explanations. But the one who remains calm and unbothered in that void instantly seizes control. Silence becomes their ally, and the longer it stretches, the more power it holds. Psychologically, silence is a mirror. When you refuse to fill it, the other person feels the weight of their own thoughts echoing back at them. They begin to overthink, replaying what they said, wondering if they made a mistake or questioning whether you disapprove. That invisible tension grows with every second, and more often than not, they will break first, talking too much, revealing too much, or bending too far just to shatter the stillness. This tactic commands respect because it demonstrates emotional mastery. It shows that you are not desperate to be heard, that you do not seek validation through constant chatter. Instead, you dictate the tempo, forcing others to adapt to your rhythm. In negotiations, silence can make the other side lower their demands simply to end the pressure. In relationships, it creates mystery, as though your mind is deeper than your words reveal. The emotional effect is magnetic and intimidating. By not rushing to fill silence, you project unshakable confidence. You become the calm center while others grow restless. And in that quiet space, they realize the truth. Control belongs to the one who can embrace silence, not to the one who runs from it. Subtly testing loyalty. Subtly testing loyalty is a dark psychological maneuver that reveals who truly stands with you without ever asking directly. Loyalty is one of the most fragile yet powerful currencies in human relationships, and those who master the art of testing it quietly gain an advantage others can only dream of. Rather than demanding promises or confrontations, you create situations, small, almost invisible moments that expose whether someone is genuinely aligned with you or only pretending. The brilliance of this pattern lies in its subtlety. You might share a piece of information that isn't critical but appears personal. Then watch if it resurfaces elsewhere. You might ask for a minor favor that costs them little but reveals whether they prioritize you when it's inconvenient. You might even stay silent in moments of conflict to see if they step forward on your behalf unprompted. Each of these quiet tests acts as a mirror reflecting their true loyalty without forcing a declaration. Psychologically, humans reveal their priorities in small actions, not grand speeches. By placing them in these unnoticed trials, you bypass words and see the truth in behavior. And once loyalty or betrayal is exposed, you hold an unspoken power over them. If they prove themselves, they become more deeply bonded to you, often without realizing you engineered the moment. If they fail, you now know their limits, all while they remain unaware you were testing them. The emotional impact is profound. Those who sense, even faintly, that they are being evaluated tend to overcompensate, trying harder to win your approval. Those who fail often feel guilt or unease, which only deepens your control. Subtle loyalty tests transform ordinary interactions into quiet revelations, giving you insight while keeping others blind to your strategy. Ignoring provocations. Ignoring provocations is one of the most disarming psychological strategies, a display of self-mastery that flips the power dynamic instantly. When someone insults you, mocks you, or tries to drag you into an emotional trap, they are seeking a reaction. The moment you react, they win. But when you refuse to give them that satisfaction, when you meet their provocation with silence, indifference, or calm composure, you strip them of their power and elevate yourself above the fray. Psychologically, humans are conditioned to feed on emotional responses. An insult feels sharp only if it lands, and it lands only if you let it. By ignoring it, you expose the emptiness of their attack. You force the aggressor to sit in the awkwardness of their failed attempt, often pushing them to overextend themselves, revealing insecurity and weakness. In that moment, the tables turn. The one who sought to humiliate ends up looking foolish, while you emerge untouchable. The emotional weight of ignoring provocations is profound. Those watching the interaction feel the tension shift. Respect flows to the one who remained composed, not to the one who lost control. Your refusal to be baited makes you appear stronger, harder to shake, and far more powerful than the one scrambling for your attention. Even in private, ignoring a provocation leaves the other person obsessing, replaying the moment, wondering why they couldn't break you. It is an act of psychological warfare cloaked in restraint. The aggressor burns with the fire of their own frustration, while you stand cool and unscathed. To ignore is not weakness. It is dominance in its purest, quietest form. Subdued but firm corrections. Subdued but firm corrections are a subtle yet devastatingly effective way to command respect without ever raising your voice. Instead of exploding in anger or humiliating someone with blunt criticism, you deliver your correction with quiet certainty, leaving no room for doubt but no trace of unnecessary aggression. This balance disarms people because it strikes at both their conscience and their pride. The firmness makes them feel the weight of their mistake, while the subdued delivery prevents them from deflecting or fighting back. The psychology behind this technique lies in authority through composure. When you correct someone calmly, it communicates that you are in complete control, not just of them, but of yourself. People instinctively respect those who can discipline without losing balance. It makes you appear not as someone struggling to assert power, but as someone who already possesses it. A steady tone, unwavering eye contact, and precise words are enough to pierce through excuses and resistance, leaving the other person silently aware of their error. The emotional impact of subdued correction is far stronger than loud reprimands. Yelling can be dismissed as overreaction, but calm firmness lingers, echoing in the mind long after the moment has passed. The person corrected feels both exposed and grateful. They cannot deny the truth of your words, and they respect the strength it took to deliver them without theatrics. In leadership, this pattern creates loyalty because people admire those who can discipline with dignity. In personal relationships, it breeds respect because it sets boundaries without tearing down connection. Subdued but firm corrections cut deeper than anger ever could, embedding your authority in silence and restraint. Underreaction to praise. Underreaction to praise is a subtle yet devastatingly powerful psychological tactic that flips the script on validation. Most people light up when they receive compliments, rushing to thank, deflect, or prove they deserve the recognition. But when you respond with calm composure, acknowledging praise without feeding into it, you send a silent message that admiration is expected, not extraordinary. This shifts the power dynamic instantly, making others view you as someone above the need for approval. Psychologically, people give praise to test influence. They want to see if their words can sway you, if your mood will rise or fall with their validation. When you underreact, you deny them that power. Your restraint suggests that recognition is nothing new to you, that you are used to being admired, and that your sense of worth does not come from others. That lack of dependency creates an aura of strength, making your presence feel larger than the room. The effect is magnetic. By refusing to glow under flattery, you create mystery. If praise does not excite you, what does? This unanswered question pulls people in, making them want to prove themselves further, to work harder for your approval, because your attention suddenly feels scarce. Emotionally, it unsettles those who expect their compliments to win you over. Instead of controlling the exchange, they are left chasing your reactions, amplifying their respect in the process. The quiet confidence of underreacting to praise makes every interaction feel weighted. It reminds others that while they may seek your approval, you are never the one seeking theirs. Refusing to chase validation. Refusing to chase validation is a psychological stance that radiates unshakable strength because it strips away the neediness most people unconsciously display in every interaction. Humans are wired to crave approval. It is built into our survival instincts. From childhood, we learn to seek acceptance, to feel safe, loved, and worthy. But when you break that cycle and stop chasing validation, you instantly command respect because you become the rare individual who does not beg for recognition, but instead makes others fight for yours. The power of this pattern lies in contrast. Most people pepper conversations with hints, hoping for compliments or reassurance. They adapt their behavior just to win approval, and in doing so, they quietly lower their value. But when you hold your ground without looking for affirmation, you create tension. People feel the absence of your need, and it unsettles them. They begin to question why you are not asking for their approval. Then they start offering it freely, desperate to break the imbalance. Psychologically, this taps into the principle of scarcity. Your validation becomes rare, and rarity breeds desire. The less you seek approval, the more valuable your acknowledgement becomes when you do give it. Even a small nod of recognition feels amplified, as though they've earned something rare and precious. The emotional effect is magnetic. By refusing to chase validation, you flip the dynamic. Instead of you pursuing others, they pursue you. Your self-contained confidence forces people to recalibrate their behavior, to prove themselves worthy of your recognition. And in their chase, they reveal your power, because the one who doesn't beg for validation is the one who truly holds it. Saying no without justification. Saying no without justification is one of the most commanding acts of psychological dominance. Most people feel compelled to explain themselves, to soften refusals with excuses, to pad their boundaries with endless reasoning, in order to avoid disapproval. But when you simply say no and leave it hanging in the air, you communicate something far more powerful, that your boundaries are absolute, that your time and energy belong to you, and that you do not require anyone's permission to protect them. Psychologically, this unsettles people because it denies them control. Humans crave explanations. They want to understand why they are being denied, to find loopholes, to argue against your reasoning. By refusing to justify, you give them nothing to latch onto. The simplicity of your refusal forces acceptance, even if it frustrates them. That frustration quickly turns into respect, because your silence declares a self-possession few people dare to embody. The emotional effect is striking. A clean, unapologetic no makes people recalibrate how they approach you. They realize they cannot manipulate you with guilt, pressure, or persuasion. Your refusal radiates authority because it signals that you value yourself more than their approval. Those who are used to hearing excuses from others will find themselves disarmed, perhaps even intimidated by your quiet defiance. What makes this pattern so powerful is its finality. No explanations, no apologies, just a boundary enforced with calm certainty. The absence of justification transforms a single word into a wall, one that others cannot climb. To say no without explanation is not rudeness, it is the purest form of control over your own life. Speaking in absolutes. Speaking in absolutes is a psychological technique that projects unshakable authority by removing hesitation, doubt, and ambiguity from your words. Instead of saying, I think, maybe, or it could be, you speak as if your statements are undeniable truths. Phrases like, this is the only way, it will happen, or there is no question, carry a finality that seizes attention and forces people to adjust themselves to your certainty. Humans instinctively follow conviction because conviction signals strength, while uncertainty signals weakness. The impact of absolutes lies in how they shape perception. When you present your ideas as facts rather than possibilities, people rarely challenge you directly. Instead, they begin to second-guess themselves, wondering if their hesitation is ignorance and your certainty is insight. This dynamic creates a psychological tilt. Your words become the anchor, while theirs begin to drift. Even if you are not objectively correct, your absolute delivery makes you appear as though you are, and appearance often matters more than truth in commanding respect. Emotionally, absolutes trigger both fear and fascination. Fear, because people sense that arguing against unwavering confidence is a losing battle. Fascination, because certainty is magnetic in a world full of doubt. In negotiations, speaking in absolutes makes others feel that resistance is futile, nudging them toward compliance. In relationships, it creates a dominant presence that others feel compelled to yield to. By removing the cracks of hesitation from your language, you create a voice that feels immovable. Speaking in absolutes doesn't just shape how others hear you, it shapes how they believe you, making your words resonate as commands rather than suggestions. Implied authority through presence. Implied authority through presence is the silent power that makes people recognize dominance before a single word is spoken. It is not about titles, uniforms, or external symbols of control. It is about the way you occupy space. When someone carries themselves with calm, certainty, steady posture, and an aura of unshakable self-belief, others instinctively defer. Authority implied through presence is primal. It triggers subconscious recognition of leadership as though your very existence demands acknowledgement. Psychologically, humans are wired to scan for cues of hierarchy. In groups, people unconsciously search for the figure who radiates control, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. A person who enters a room without hurry, whose movements are measured, whose gaze is deliberate, instantly disrupts the social balance. They command attention not by force, but by the unspoken suggestion that they are already in charge. This suggestion alone often compels others to comply. The brilliance of implied authority is that it thrives in subtlety. You do not need to announce your dominance. Others feel it. Your presence becomes a gravitational pull, making people second-guess themselves, soften their tone, or look to you for direction without ever being asked. This effect is amplified in silence. The less you say, the more weight your presence seems to carry, as if your words are too valuable to be wasted. The emotional effect is undeniable. People are drawn to certainty, and when you embody it through your very being, they respond with respect, admiration, or even submission. You become the unspoken leader, the one who does not need to prove authority because your presence alone already declares it. Keeping others slightly uncertain. Keeping others slightly uncertain is one of the most intoxicating dark psychology patterns because it thrives on the human brain's obsession with predictability. People crave clarity and consistency. Certainty feels safe, but when you withhold it, when you leave just enough mystery in your words, your actions, or your intentions, you create a psychological hook that keeps others endlessly engaged. They lean forward, replaying interactions, analyzing details, and searching for meaning in every subtle shift you make. The power of uncertainty lies in tension. When people don't know exactly where they stand with you, they feel compelled to win your approval, to secure your attention, to earn your consistency. A delayed message, an unreadable expression, an unexpected silence, all of these small acts of unpredictability can rattle even the most confident person. They begin to wonder, did I do something wrong? Are they upset? Do they respect me? That inner questioning puts you at the center of their thoughts. Psychologically, this taps into the same principle that makes gambling addictive: intermittent reward. When approval, affection, or recognition comes unpredictably, it becomes far more powerful than if it were constant. Each moment of validation feels like a victory, precisely because it was not guaranteed. This cycle conditions others to keep chasing your attention because the uncertainty itself fuels their desire. The emotional impact is profound. Leaders who master this technique are seen as enigmatic and commanding. In relationships, it creates magnetism and obsession. In negotiations, it keeps opponents off balance, never sure of your next move. By keeping others slightly uncertain, you make yourself the variable they cannot control, and the human mind is drawn irresistibly to what it cannot fully grasp. Leveraging ambiguity. Leveraging ambiguity is a psychological tactic that thrives on uncertainty, a weapon that makes others chase meaning where none is fully given. Human beings crave clarity. We want answers, definitions, and certainty to feel safe. But when you deliberately remain vague, when you leave words open to interpretation, you create an atmosphere of mystery and power. People lean in, analyze, and project their own assumptions onto your silence. And in doing so, they give you more influence than any explicit statement ever could. Psychologically, ambiguity unsettles because it denies closure. When you respond with, "we'll see," instead of giving a straight answer, you plant curiosity and unease. The other person keeps thinking about what you might mean, replaying your words, trying to solve a puzzle you created. This keeps you alive in their mind long after the conversation ends, while their uncertainty transforms into respect for the authority you hold over meaning itself. In darker applications, ambiguity can create dependency. By withholding clarity, you force others to seek it from you again and again. They begin to value your presence not because of what you've revealed, but because of what you've withheld. Leaders, manipulators, and influencers use this to appear more powerful, more intelligent, more alluring, because mystery always commands more attention than predictability. The emotional effect is magnetic. People respect what they cannot fully grasp, and they fear what they cannot fully read. By refusing to explain everything, you deny others control of the narrative. In the shadows of your ambiguity, They project their own desires and fears, while you remain the figure just out of reach, unpredictable, untouchable, and commanding without effort. Unapologetic disagreement. Unapologetic disagreement is a psychological tactic that radiates strength and commands instant respect because it defies the human tendency to avoid conflict and seek approval. Most people soften their dissent with phrases like, "I might be wrong, but," or "I see your point, however," out of fear of rejection. But when you disagree directly, without hesitation and without apology, you demonstrate that your sense of worth is not tied to pleasing others, that self-possession is magnetic. It signals that you value truth and conviction over comfort and compliance. The effect is jarring because it disrupts the social script. People expect pushback to be softened, diluted, or hidden behind polite qualifiers. When you strip those away and say, "No, that's not correct," or "I disagree," you force others to confront your certainty head on. This psychological clash makes them pause and reconsider, even if they don't admit it. The firmness of your stance plants doubt in their position and elevates yours, simply because most lack the courage to take such a stand. What makes unapologetic disagreement powerful is its emotional weight. It conveys fearlessness, the willingness to lose approval rather than compromise your beliefs. In groups, this instantly sets you apart as someone who cannot be swayed by pressure, someone whose voice stands above the noise of polite conformity. In relationships, it creates tension, but also respect, because people realize your boundaries are unshakable. By refusing to wrap your disagreement in apology, you shift the dynamic. Others may resist your words, but they cannot ignore them. They walk away knowing one thing with certainty: you are not someone who bends easily, and that realization alone commands respect. Slow, confident walking pace. A slow, confident walking pace is one of the most primal and visible signals of authority. Movement reveals psychology, and those who rush broadcast anxiety, desperation, or submission. But the person who walks slowly, with composure and steadiness, radiates dominance. Each step becomes a declaration: I own this space, I am not in a hurry, and nothing around me dictates my tempo. That unspoken message triggers respect before you ever open your mouth. Psychologically, speed is linked to urgency and stress. When someone moves too quickly, it suggests they are reacting to the environment rather than controlling it. By contrast, walking slowly communicates that you are in command of your world, unpressured by time or circumstance. People instinctively interpret this as a sign of higher status. Leaders do not rush because others wait for them. This subtle adjustment in pace can shift how strangers perceive you, making them give way, move aside, or subconsciously treat you with deference. The effect deepens in high-pressure environments. In moments of chaos, those who walk with calm assurance project stability, drawing others toward them as anchors of certainty. In social dynamics, a deliberate pace makes your arrival feel more significant, as though the room is waiting for you to engage. It creates an aura of inevitability. You are not chasing moments. Moments revolve around you. The emotional impact is profound. A slow, confident walk can seduce, intimidate, or inspire. It unsettles those who expect nervous energy and instead face unshakable composure. With each step, you remind the world that respect is not asked for. It is silently commanded through the way you move. Sparing use of humor. Sparing use of humor is a psychological pattern that transforms something as simple as laughter into a tool of influence. Most people overuse humor in an attempt to gain acceptance, flooding conversations with jokes, self-deprecation, or constant attempts to entertain. But when you ration humor, when it becomes rare, precise, and intentional, you elevate its impact, making every smile or laugh you grant feel earned, valuable, and unforgettable. Psychologically, humor is a bonding mechanism. It lowers defenses, creates trust, and accelerates closeness. But when used excessively, it loses its power, signaling insecurity and a desperate need for approval. By contrast, the one who rarely uses humor but deploys it with timing and precision creates electricity in the room. People lean in, waiting for that sharp line, that dry remark, that subtle smirk that slices through the seriousness. The scarcity of your humor makes it magnetic. Sparing humor also changes perception. Instead of being seen as the jester seeking validation, you are viewed as the one in control of the room's energy. A single well-placed joke can disarm tension in a heated conversation, make allies feel bonded to you, or highlight your intelligence without you ever having to boast. When laughter comes from someone who rarely gives it, it feels like a gift, a sign of connection that others instinctively crave more of. The emotional effect is powerful. People will remember the one time you made them laugh harder than they expected, precisely because it was rare. Your silence between those moments only amplifies the anticipation. By using humor sparingly, you don't just make people laugh, you make them feel your presence, turning levity into a weapon of respect and control. Subtle intimidation through gaze. Subtle intimidation through gaze is one of the most primal psychological tools, a force that strikes at instincts far deeper than words ever could. The human brain is hardwired to interpret eye contact as a signal of dominance, threat, or desire, and when you wield your gaze with precision, you can unsettle, control, and command without speaking. It is not the loud stare of aggression that holds power, but the quiet, unwavering look that lingers just long enough to make someone feel exposed under your eyes. Psychologically, this works because prolonged or focused eye contact activates a primal fear response. In the animal kingdom, predators lock eyes with prey before striking, and that ancient association lingers in us. When you look at someone and refuse to flinch, you send a silent message. I see you, I measure you, and I am unafraid. Most people cannot tolerate this for long. They look away, signaling submission, while you establish dominance simply by holding your ground. The emotional effect of such a gaze is profound. It can make someone stumble over their words, second-guess their thoughts, or reveal nervous behaviors they cannot hide. In group settings, directing this gaze at someone commands the room because everyone feels the shift in tension. Even in moments of silence, your eyes do the talking, projecting authority and control. When used sparingly, the subtle intimidation of your gaze makes others hyper-aware of your presence. They remember it long after, because being seen too deeply leaves a mark. Respect grows not from aggression, but from the quiet power of eyes that refuse to yield, responding with questions instead of answers. Responding with questions instead of answers is a psychological tactic that flips the balance of power in any interaction. While most people scramble to provide explanations, defend themselves, or prove their knowledge, the one who responds with a question refuses to be cornered. It shifts the burden back onto the other person, forcing them to reveal more, explain themselves further, or expose hidden motives. By doing so, you remain in control, steering the conversation without ever giving away more than you choose. This technique is powerful because it disrupts expectations. When someone asks a question, they assume authority, placing you in the position of respondent. But when you answer their question with another, the dynamic reverses. Suddenly, they are the one on trial, fumbling to justify their position. This creates subtle psychological discomfort because humans are conditioned to seek resolution in conversations. When you deny them that resolution, they lean further in, desperate to close the gap you've created. The emotional effect is striking. People feel as though you can see through them, as if you're peeling back layers they hadn't intended to expose. It makes you appear sharper, more composed, and far less vulnerable to manipulation. In negotiations, this tactic can unearth hidden details the other side would rather keep buried. In relationships, It can create an aura of mystery and depth, making others feel like you understand them more than they understand you. Questions carry power because they demand answers, and answers require vulnerability. By refusing to hand over easy responses and instead posing sharper inquiries, you remain the one pulling the strings, an architect of the dialogue, while others stumble to meet your pace. Selective empathy. Selective empathy is a dark psychological tool that commands respect by controlling when, how, and with whom you show understanding. Unlike constant empathy, which can make someone appear soft, predictable, or easily manipulated, selective empathy creates unpredictability. By choosing carefully when to acknowledge someone's feelings, you condition them to value your validation like a scarce resource. The effect is addictive. When they do receive your empathy, it feels profound, almost like winning a prize. Psychologically, this taps into the human craving for recognition. People want to feel seen and understood, but when empathy is withheld most of the time, they begin to chase it, working harder to earn your attention and approval. It becomes a psychological reward system. You become the gatekeeper of emotional comfort. This makes your presence magnetic because people instinctively respect and even fear those who control what they most desire. Acknowledgement. In influence and persuasion, selective empathy is devastatingly effective. By showing deep understanding in key moments, you can lower defenses and build trust. But by withholding it in others, you remind people of your independence and authority. It unsettles them because they cannot predict when you will connect and when you will remain detached. That unpredictability keeps them on edge, elevating your importance in their emotional landscape. The emotional impact is powerful. When you finally choose to empathize, it feels more meaningful because of its rarity. People cling to it, replay it, and remember it. By not giving empathy freely, you ensure that when you do, it lands like a thunderclap, both comforting and commanding at once. Strategic vulnerability. Strategic vulnerability is a psychological pattern that turns weakness into power, carefully revealing just enough of yourself to disarm others and draw them closer, while never exposing more than you choose. Vulnerability, when uncontrolled, can be a liability. It invites pity, judgment, or exploitation, but when wielded with precision, it becomes a weapon of influence, making people drop their guard, open their hearts, and bind themselves to you with trust and loyalty. The brilliance of this pattern lies in its selectivity. By sharing a personal story, a struggle, or a flaw at just the right moment, you appear authentic and human, while subtly guiding how others perceive you. Psychologically, this triggers reciprocity. When someone feels you've entrusted them with something meaningful, they feel compelled to reciprocate, revealing their own truths, weaknesses, or secrets. In that exchange, you gain access to their deeper self while maintaining control over your own. Strategic vulnerability also creates a paradox of power. By showing a glimpse of imperfection, you appear stronger, not weaker, because it signals confidence, the ability to expose without fear. Leaders who reveal a hardship, negotiators who admit a challenge, or partners who disclose just enough pain create bonds far stronger than those built on cold perfection. The emotional effect is profound. People feel special, chosen, even honored when you reveal something vulnerable to them. They interpret it as trust, and in return, they give you more of themselves. What they don't realize is that you have revealed only what you wanted them to see. Strategic vulnerability is not surrender. It is control disguised as intimacy, and it makes others respect you all the more for daring to be open. Leaving statements unfinished. Leaving statements unfinished is a psychological tactic that plays on the human mind's obsession with closure. People crave complete thoughts, clear conclusions, and neatly tied explanations. When you deliberately stop short, when your words trail off just before the point, when you imply instead of finishing, You create tension that forces others to lean in, imagine the rest, and fill the silence with their own interpretations. That gap between what is said and what is left unsaid becomes a breeding ground for intrigue, power, and respect. Psychologically, this technique works because ambiguity is uncomfortable. An unfinished statement lingers in the air like an unresolved chord in music, demanding resolution. But instead of providing it, you leave the burden with your audience. Their minds race, trying to guess your meaning, replaying your words, sometimes even granting you more credit than you deserve by assuming the missing piece must be profound. In doing so, they hand over control of their thoughts to you. The emotional effect is subtle yet striking. By withholding the end of your statement, you appear mysterious, as though you know more than you reveal. It makes others question, doubt, and even respect the discipline it takes not to over-explain. In negotiations or conflicts, leaving words unfinished can be more intimidating than direct threats, because the imagination often conjures something darker and more powerful than reality. What makes this pattern so potent is that silence speaks louder than excess. By saying less, by refusing to tie the final knot, you make others do the work of completing the thought, and in that gap, you become the one who holds the true authority. Controlled interruptions. Controlled interruptions are a razor-sharp psychological tactic that allows you to dominate a conversation without descending into chaos. Unlike clumsy or impatient interruptions, which reveal insecurity and earn irritation, controlled interruptions are deliberate, precise, and impossible to ignore. They are not accidents. They are executions of timing and authority. By cutting in at just the right moment, you seize the flow of dialogue and redirect attention to yourself, signaling that your voice carries more weight than the one you've silenced. The power of this technique lies in disruption. Conversations have rhythms, and people subconsciously expect that rhythm to be respected. When you break it with confidence, you shock the system, forcing others to stop and pivot toward you. The speaker may stumble, the audience may shift their focus, but all eyes and ears fall on you. In that moment, you establish control, not through aggression, but through mastery of timing. Psychologically, controlled interruptions also frame you as decisive. You don't wait for permission to speak because you don't need it. This makes others recalibrate their perception of you, often elevating you to the role of authority in the discussion. In negotiations, it can derail an opponent's momentum, forcing them to play defense. In group dynamics, it marks you as the person whose words must be heard, even above others. The emotional impact is equally potent. A precise interruption can unnerve, intimidate, or intrigue, depending on how you wield it. Too soft, and it goes unnoticed. Too forceful, and it feels abrasive. But controlled with calm confidence, it cuts through noise like a blade, leaving no doubt that you own the conversation the moment you choose to enter it. Rare but impactful words. Rare but impactful words are a psychological weapon that transforms speech into power. Most people talk endlessly, spilling details, repeating themselves, and diluting their influence with noise. But when you choose to speak sparingly, saving your words for moments that matter, you turn language into a scarce resource. Every sentence becomes loaded, every phrase carries weight, and people lean in, waiting to catch each one. The silence between your words becomes as powerful as the words themselves. Psychologically, humans associate scarcity with value. When words are rare, they feel more important, as though they carry hidden wisdom. This creates a magnetic effect. People begin to listen more carefully, remember what you say longer, and assign greater significance to even the simplest statement. A few carefully chosen words can silence a room or shift the direction of an entire conversation because they feel deliberate rather than impulsive. This tactic also magnifies authority. Leaders, negotiators, and manipulators use it to maintain control. Instead of battling for attention, They let others exhaust themselves talking, then drop a single sentence that reframes everything. That contrast, noise versus precision, makes their voice the one that lingers. Even in relationships, withholding constant commentary makes your rare words of approval, criticism, or affection strike deeper, cutting into the heart with more intensity. The emotional effect is undeniable. People respect those who do not waste breath because it signals discipline, confidence, and self-control. When you speak rarely, your words become unpredictable, and unpredictability creates tension. That tension hooks people, making them hang on to every syllable, knowing that when you finally speak, it will matter. Making others wait for answers. Making others wait for answers is a dark psychological tactic that exerts power through anticipation. In a world addicted to instant replies, your deliberate delay creates tension that gnaws at people, forcing them to fixate on you and your eventual response. The silence between their question and your answer becomes a void they cannot stand, one they rush to fill with their own thoughts, doubts, and insecurities. By holding back, you transform something ordinary into a moment heavy with significance. Psychologically, humans crave closure. When they ask a question, they expect immediacy because an unanswered query leaves the mind restless. By making them wait, you amplify the weight of your response before it even arrives. They replay their words, wondering if they said something wrong, if you are displeased, or if you are calculating something far deeper. That uncertainty makes your eventual words feel more valuable, more deliberate, and more powerful than if you had spoken instantly. This tactic thrives in high-stakes moments. In negotiations, a pause before answering makes opponents nervous, often leading them to speak again, revealing more than they should. In personal relationships, the delay creates longing and emotional tension, making your attention feel scarce and precious. In leadership, it projects the aura of someone who carefully weighs every word, someone whose opinion is never given lightly. The emotional impact is undeniable. The longer they wait, the more they crave your response, and the more control you hold over their state of mind. By mastering the art of delay, you condition others to lean into your rhythm, to respect your timing, and to feel the gravity of every answer you finally choose to give. Minimal nodding or validation cues. Minimal nodding or validation cues is a psychological pattern that quietly seizes control of interactions by breaking an unspoken rule of communication. Most people are conditioned to constantly nod, smile, or give verbal affirmations like, to signal attention and agreement. This habit is rooted in our need to be liked and accepted. But when you deliberately withhold these cues, when you listen without rewarding every word, you create an unsettling shift in power. Others feel exposed, uncertain, and strangely compelled to earn your approval. Psychologically, people rely on validation as feedback. Nods, smiles, and affirmations act like social fuel, making the speaker feel secure. When you don't provide it, their comfort evaporates. They begin to question themselves. Am I making sense? Do they agree? Do they respect me? That creeping self-doubt destabilizes them while positioning you as the one who defines the value of the exchange. Your silence becomes the mirror in which their insecurity grows. The emotional effect is profound. Instead of feeling casually affirmed, people begin to chase your reactions. They lean in, overshare, or alter their tone in a desperate attempt to break through your calm, unreadable demeanor. And when you finally do nod, smile, or give even the smallest acknowledgement, it lands like a reward. That scarcity of approval makes your cues infinitely more valuable than the constant feedback others hand out freely. Minimal validation transforms you into the silent judge of every interaction. By withholding, you project composure, superiority, and discipline. People can't read you easily, and that mystery makes them respect you, even fear disappointing you, because your approval feels rare, precious, and earned. Exuding composure in chaos. Exuding composure in chaos is one of the most commanding psychological patterns because it separates you instantly from the crowd. When everything around you spirals into panic, voices rising, tempers flaring, movements frantic, the one who remains calm becomes the unspoken leader. Human beings instinctively seek stability in crisis, and the person who radiates control in the storm becomes a magnet for attention, trust, and respect. In chaos, composure is not just admirable, it is power. The effect lies in contrast. While others betray fear through trembling voices, erratic gestures, or desperate words, your stillness and measured tone cut through the noise like a blade. People subconsciously assume that calm equals competence, and competence equals authority. Even if you have no more information than anyone else, your refusal to crumble makes others look to you for direction. This psychological transference of power happens naturally. People want to believe that someone who is calm must know the way forward. Emotionally, your composure unsettles adversaries. An opponent who cannot shake you, even with aggression or unpredictability, begins to doubt their own power. They push harder, growing more reckless, while you remain anchored. That imbalance exposes them while amplifying you. In groups, your collected demeanor soothes fear and creates order, making others unconsciously align with your pace. Exuding composure in chaos is not just about appearing calm, it is about embodying unshakable presence. Your silence speaks louder than their noise, your steadiness heavier than their panic. In the fire of disorder, you become the eye of the storm, untouchable, immovable, and undeniably respected. Projecting unbothered detachment. Projecting unbothered detachment is a psychological pattern that radiates authority by showing that nothing rattles you. While most people wear their emotions openly, becoming defensive, flustered, or overly reactive, the one who remains calm and seemingly untouchable exudes an aura of superiority. Detachment tells the world that you are not controlled by external validation, insults, or pressure. It is the posture of someone who cannot be easily swayed, and that unshakable composure commands instant respect. Psychologically, humans test one another constantly, often through subtle provocations or exaggerated praise. These are attempts to gauge power. Can they push your buttons? Can they provoke a reaction? Can they pull you into their emotional storm? When you project detachment, you deny them that victory. Every insult bounces off, every attempt to impress you falls flat, and every emotional tug loses its grip. Your refusal to be moved unsettles them because it forces them to recognize that their influence over you is non-existent. The brilliance of this tactic is that it magnifies the weight of your attention when you finally choose to give it. If you usually appear unaffected, a small smile, a nod, or a rare show of approval suddenly feels monumental. People crave your reaction precisely because you withhold it, and this scarcity makes them work harder for your recognition. The emotional effect is magnetic and intimidating. Unbothered detachment makes others feel like they are auditioning for your approval, while you sit calmly above the fray. In that posture of untouchable composure, you become the one who defines the terms of respect without ever asking for it. Never explaining twice. Never explaining twice is a psychological stance that radiates dominance and authority because it signals that your words carry enough weight to be heard the first time. When you refuse to repeat yourself, you project certainty, self-respect, and an unspoken expectation that others must rise to your standard of attention. The moment you explain again, you dilute your power, but when you hold firm, you make your presence impossible to ignore. Psychologically, this pattern leverages scarcity and consequence. By not repeating yourself, you teach people that your words are not disposable. They learn to listen more carefully, to value your communication, and to understand that missing it means losing it. This creates a subtle pressure in every interaction. Others lean in, pay closer attention, and give you their focus because they know you will not hand it to them twice. The effect is especially powerful in leadership or high-stakes negotiations. A leader who repeats themselves is seen as pleading. A leader who speaks once is seen as commanding. In relationships, it can draw deep respect because it communicates boundaries. Your time, your words, and your energy are not to be wasted. Even in casual exchanges, it makes people pause, realizing you hold yourself to a standard that forces them to treat you differently. The emotional impact is sharp. People may feel unsettled, even guilty, when you refuse to repeat yourself, but that discomfort cements the lesson. Your voice must be taken seriously. Never explaining twice is not about cruelty. It is about setting the tone that your words are precious and that respect is the only proper response to them. Rare but powerful storytelling. Rare but powerful storytelling is a psychological pattern that captivates because of its scarcity. In a world overflowing with noise and endless talk, the person who speaks rarely but chooses to tell a story with weight commands respect instantly. Stories are the oldest form of influence. They bypass logic and strike directly at the emotional core. When you withhold them until the right moment, every listener feels privileged to hear them, and their impact multiplies. Psychologically, human beings are wired to respond to stories more than facts. A well-timed story creates vivid imagery in the mind, triggering emotions like fear, admiration, or awe. But when stories are told too often, they lose power. Scarcity creates demand. By telling stories sparingly, you ensure each one lands like a weapon, shaping perception and anchoring your authority in the minds of others. People hang on to your words because they sense that what you share is deliberate, not careless. The emotional pull is undeniable. A rare story can silence a room, pulling everyone into your world, making them feel the weight of your experiences. It transforms you into more than just a speaker. You become a figure of wisdom, someone with depth and hidden layers. When delivered calmly and with precision, a single story can shift how people see you forever, leaving an imprint that facts and arguments never could. The power lies not just in the story itself, but in the restraint behind it. By telling fewer stories but choosing them with impact, you build an aura of gravity. People remember them, repeat them, and attach them to your identity, granting you respect that lingers long after the moment ends. Reframing questions back to others. Reframing questions back to others is a psychological tactic that flips the balance of inquiry, placing you in control while making the other person expose themselves further. Instead of giving a direct answer, you redirect the weight of the question onto them, forcing them to clarify, justify, or reveal more than they originally intended. This maneuver creates the impression that you are unshakable, unwilling to be cornered, and always operating one step ahead. The brilliance of this technique lies in how it unsettles people. Questions are usually meant to probe, to test, or to extract information. But when you calmly reframe with a response like, "What makes you ask that?" or "What do you think?" you strip the question of its power and return it like a mirror. Suddenly, they are the one under the spotlight, scrambling to explain themselves while you remain composed and untouchable. The shift is subtle but devastating. It makes them feel as though they revealed more than they gained. Psychologically, reframing creates authority. The one who answers is placed in a submissive role, while the one who questions controls the flow. By refusing to give up that power, you become the director of the conversation rather than the actor within it. In negotiations, it can uncover hidden intentions. In relationships, it breeds intrigue, making you appear more mysterious and difficult to pin down. The emotional effect is equally sharp. People expect answers to resolve tension, but reframing prolongs it, forcing them to sit in their own discomfort. That tension makes you unforgettable. By making others question themselves, you command respect without offering a single piece of yourself. Speaking, when attention peaks. Speaking when attention peaks is a dark psychological tactic that transforms timing into dominance. Most people speak whenever they get the chance, rushing to fill silence or scrambling to keep up with the flow of conversation. But the one who waits, observing the room, and chooses to speak only when attention is at its highest seizes control effortlessly. Their words land heavier, not because of volume, but because of perfect timing. Psychologically, humans are wired to remember what interrupts a pattern. When the room grows quiet, when tension builds, or when curiosity reaches its peak, the person who finally breaks the silence becomes the focal point. This is why comedians pause before delivering a punchline, why leaders hold silence before making announcements, and why manipulators wait for the moment of greatest tension to insert their words. It's not just what is said, but when it is said that burns it into memory. Speaking at the peak of attention creates a surge of respect because it signals mastery of presence. You are not competing for scraps of focus. You are commanding the spotlight at will. It shows you are patient, calculating, and in full control of the rhythm of interaction. This precision makes even simple statements feel profound because they arrive at the exact moment people are desperate for release. The emotional effect is electric. People lean in, their minds sharpen, their emotions heighten, and your words pierce deeper. By waiting for the peak, you turn language into impact, and the room bends to your timing. In that instant, you are not just speaking, you are orchestrating attention itself. Subtle dominance gestures. Subtle dominance gestures are the unspoken language of authority, small physical cues that radiate confidence without a single word. Two of the most powerful examples are steepling the hands and leaning back while maintaining control of the conversation. These gestures bypass logic and strike directly at instinct, triggering primal associations of strength, composure, and leadership. When you steeple your hands, fingertips pressed together, palms apart, you project calm certainty, as if your thoughts are already aligned with power. It is a posture of someone who calculates, who doesn't rush, who feels no need to defend. Others subconsciously register this as authority because it contrasts so sharply with defensive gestures like crossed arms or fidgeting hands. The steeple is controlled, deliberate, and dominant. Leaning back while maintaining steady eye contact communicates the same message with a different energy. I am unthreatened. Most people lean forward when they want approval or validation, but leaning back flips the script. You signal that others must reach towards you, that you are not chasing them, that your approval is the reward they must earn. It establishes psychological distance while magnifying your presence, making people feel they are the ones auditioning for your attention. The brilliance of these subtle gestures is in their quiet power. They do not scream dominance. They whisper it, leaving others to feel it rather than hear it. Psychologically, they create a tension that draws respect because your body is sending signals that you are untouchable, self-contained, and entirely in control. In a world where most people's movements betray insecurity, these small acts of composure make you unforgettable. Refraining from nervous laughter. Refraining from nervous laughter is a psychological stance that radiates control, composure, and silent dominance. Most people laugh when they feel tension, sometimes at jokes that aren't funny, sometimes at insults meant to sting, and sometimes in moments of awkwardness where they don't know what else to do. That nervous laugh is a release valve, a way of signaling vulnerability and a plea for acceptance. But when you refuse to use it, when you face discomfort, mockery, or silence without the shield of a laugh, you project an aura of strength that unsettles and commands respect. Psychologically, laughter is often a mask, a signal of submission. It says, I mean no threat. Please don't reject me. Predators, social or otherwise, recognize this instinctively and exploit it. By eliminating nervous laughter, you strip away that weakness. You stand firm in silence, forcing others to confront the tension you refuse to dissolve. That stillness makes you appear fearless, and fearlessness is magnetic. The emotional effect is powerful. Without laughter to soften the edges, your words carry more gravity, your presence feels more intense, and your refusal to appease others unsettles them. They begin to measure their words around you, careful not to overstep, because your composure makes them feel exposed. When you do laugh, it is deliberate, meaningful, and charged with intention, making it far more impactful than the empty chuckles of others. Resisting the urge to laugh nervously is more than self-control. It is a declaration of inner authority. It signals that you are not here to entertain or to beg for belonging. You are here to be taken seriously, and that demand for respect echoes in the silence you leave unbroken. Using pauses to pressure others. Using pauses to pressure others is one of the most subtle yet crushing psychological tactics, a tool that weaponizes silence to bend conversations in your favor. People are conditioned to dread empty space in dialogue. Silence feels unnatural, uncomfortable, and heavy. When you deliberately pause, whether before answering, after a question, or in the middle of a statement, you create a vacuum that others feel compelled to fill, and in their rush to escape the tension, they often reveal more than they intended, concede ground, or stumble into weakness. The brilliance of the pause lies in how it magnifies presence. When you stop speaking, every second stretches in the other person's mind. They replay what they said, questioning whether they were wrong, whether you disapprove, or whether you've uncovered something they hope to hide. Their anxiety builds with every heartbeat, while you remain still, calm, and unreadable. That imbalance shifts power instantly. You become the one who dictates the rhythm, while they scramble to adjust. In negotiations, a pause after an offer can make the other side feel insecure, pushing them to sweeten the deal before you even respond. In confrontations, pausing after someone's accusation can make them soften their tone, backtrack, or second-guess their attack. Even in casual conversation, a well-placed pause can make your words echo louder, because the silence that follows forces them to linger in the listener's mind. Emotionally, the pause is suffocating. It denies people the closure they crave and makes them squirm under invisible weight. By mastering silence as a weapon, you don't just speak, you dominate the space between words, turning emptiness into undeniable pressure. Speaking less than others. Speaking less than others is one of the most subtle yet commanding psychological strategies because it flips the natural urge to prove oneself. Most people talk excessively, trying to impress, justify, or earn validation. But when you deliberately say less, you create an aura of mystery and power. Your restraint forces others to carry the weight of the conversation while you remain calm, unreadable, and in control. Psychologically, silence is never neutral. When you speak less, people begin to project meaning onto your silence. They wonder what you're thinking, whether you agree or if you're silently judging them. This uncertainty unsettles them and magnifies your presence. Your rare words feel deliberate, while theirs spill out nervously, exposing more than they intended. The less you speak, the more weight your voice carries when you finally choose to. In group settings, the effect is even stronger. While others compete to be heard, your quiet restraint makes you appear above the noise. When you eventually contribute, people stop and listen because your words feel rare and significant. Leaders, negotiators, and manipulators exploit this pattern to make every statement echo louder, as if silence itself has been sharpening their voice. The emotional pull of this tactic is undeniable. Speaking less elevates you because it signals self-assurance. You don't need to explain, convince, or chase attention. Instead, attention chases you. People respect those who seem in control of their words because it hints at discipline, confidence, and hidden depth. By speaking less than others, you make them work harder to understand you, while you reveal only what you choose. Maintaining scarcity of presence. Maintaining scarcity of presence is a dark psychological pattern that transforms you into something people crave, simply by not always being available. Human beings are wired to desire what is rare and undervalue what is abundant. When you make yourself constantly present, always answering, always showing up, always within reach, you dilute your power. But when you withhold your presence, when you appear sparingly and on your own terms, you ignite curiosity, anticipation, and respect. Scarcity amplifies value. Psychologically, people equate limited access with higher worth, the same way diamonds are treasured, not because they are useful, but because they are rare. By maintaining distance, you force others to fill the silence with their imagination. They begin to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, and why your time isn't freely given. That wondering keeps you alive in their mind long after you've left the room. The emotional effect is profound. Your absence creates tension, and that tension makes your return magnetic. A simple word from you feels amplified because it doesn't happen often. A glance, a laugh, or a moment of shared attention becomes a prize precisely because it is scarce. People lean harder into the moments they do have with you, valuing them more than they would if you were always around. This pattern works in leadership, relationships, and influence alike. Leaders who don't hover are respected more. Lovers who aren't constantly available are desired more. Negotiators who control access to their presence are valued more. Scarcity turns you from ordinary into unforgettable, because the less you give, the more people fight to earn what remains. Refusing to overreact emotionally. Refusing to overreact emotionally is a psychological stance that communicates unshakable strength. Most people are quick to let emotions hijack their behavior. Anger, defensiveness, excitement, or fear spilling out the moment they're provoked. But when you withhold that overreaction, when you meet chaos with composure and pressure with restraint, you send a message that unsettles everyone around you. You cannot be controlled. Psychologically, overreaction signals vulnerability. It tells the world that others have the power to dictate your state of mind, that their words or actions can pull you into chaos. By refusing to take the bait, you deny them that power. The aggressor feels small when their provocation fails, while observers shift their respect toward you, the one who remains calm while others unravel. Emotional restraint becomes proof of discipline, and discipline is a language everyone instinctively respects. The emotional weight is immense. When you do not react with anger to insults, the insulter appears desperate. When you do not gush with excitement at praise, the praiser realizes your validation does not come cheap. When you do not collapse under stress, those around you see someone who cannot be shaken. This makes people tread carefully, measuring themselves against your steadiness. The beauty of this pattern lies in its simplicity. You don't have to dominate with volume, threats, or theatrics. Your refusal to be moved becomes the intimidation. Respect is born not from how loudly you react, but from how calmly you rise above. To refuse emotional overreaction is to reveal a deeper truth. Control over yourself is the ultimate control over others. Nonchalant responses to challenges. Nonchalant responses to challenges are a devastating display of psychological dominance because they strip conflict of its power and expose the challenger as insignificant. Most people, when confronted, react defensively, raise their voice, or scramble to prove themselves. But when you respond with calm indifference, shrugging off the attack, answering with a smirk, or delivering a simple, "Is that so?" you send a chilling message: you do not threaten me. That nonchalance unsettles people far more than aggression because it implies you see them as too small to take seriously. The psychology behind this tactic is simple yet brutal. Humans seek validation even in conflict. When they challenge you, they crave a reaction, proof that they've struck a nerve. By refusing to give them that satisfaction, you rob them of power. Your indifference magnifies their insecurity, making them feel foolish for even trying. The less you seem to care, the more they spiral, their energy clashing against your unshakable calm. The emotional weight of nonchalance is enormous. In confrontations, it makes you appear untouchable, the eye of the storm that cannot be rattled. In group settings, it elevates you above petty disputes because you show that your focus remains on higher ground while others flail in the mud. Even in personal relationships, this tactic can create an aura of strength and allure, as people instinctively respect the one who cannot be baited into chaos. Nonchalance is not weakness, it is control. Every relaxed response, every casual dismissal, every calm acknowledgement becomes a reminder that while others burn with emotion, you stand above it all, commanding respect through effortless composure. Creating slight tension on purpose. Creating slight tension on purpose is a dark psychological technique that leverages discomfort to command respect and attention. Most people go out of their way to smooth interactions, to keep things light, agreeable, and easy. But when you deliberately allow tension to build, or even create it yourself, you force others into a heightened emotional state where your presence feels larger, sharper, and impossible to ignore. Tension unsettles, and in that unsettled state, people become more susceptible to influence. Psychologically, tension acts like a spotlight. It makes every word, gesture, and silence feel heavier than it truly is. By withholding a reaction, delaying an answer, asking a cutting question, or holding eye contact just a little too long, you disrupt the natural flow of comfort. That disruption forces the other person into self-awareness, making them reevaluate what they've said or how they're behaving. Suddenly, the balance of control shifts. They are reacting to you, not the other way around. The brilliance of controlled tension is that it magnifies your authority. People equate calmness with predictability, but they equate tension with significance. When you create just enough unease, they begin to treat you with greater seriousness, weighing your words more carefully, seeking your approval more urgently. Leaders, seducers, and manipulators all use this because tension keeps others on edge, craving resolution that only you can provide. The emotional impact is undeniable. Slight tension creates gravity. It makes people lean in, adjust themselves, and wonder what you'll do next. And in that moment of charged silence or that subtle disruption, they realize you hold the power to control not just the conversation, but their very state of mind. Controlling meeting dynamics. Controlling meeting dynamics is one of the most commanding dark psychology patterns because it allows you to shape the flow of energy, attention, and authority in any group setting. Meetings are arenas of subtle power struggles. Who speaks first, who interrupts, who gets ignored, and who everyone looks toward for final confirmation. When you master this pattern, you don't just participate in the meeting, you own it. The first layer of control comes through presence. Entering the room with steady posture, deliberate movements, and purposeful silence sets the tone before words are even spoken. When you sit at the table as if it belongs to you, when you claim space without apology, others instinctively recalibrate around your authority. The second layer is timing. By choosing when to speak, delaying until tension builds, or cutting in at the moment of peak attention, you shift the rhythm of the conversation. The group begins unconsciously waiting for your input, as if progress is impossible without your voice. Psychologically, this places you in the role of gatekeeper. By slowing down discussions, redirecting topics, or pausing to consider points, you train others to adapt to your pace. Interrupting strategically, calmly but firmly, dismantles competing dominance without aggression. Even controlling your eye contact during meetings dictates the flow. Looking at someone signals permission, while looking away silences them without a word. The emotional effect on others is subtle but profound. They feel both unsettled and magnetized, compelled to follow your lead because you silently demand it. Meetings stop being shared spaces and become arenas where your composure, timing, and presence dictate the outcome. To control the dynamics of a meeting is to control the direction of decisions and ultimately the respect of everyone in the room. Withholding immediate opinions. Withholding immediate opinions is a psychological pattern that exerts quiet dominance in any interaction. In a world where most people rush to speak, eager to be heard, and desperate to prove they matter, the one who holds back becomes the most powerful voice in the room. By not revealing your stance right away, you create suspense, mystery, and an unspoken hierarchy where others wait for your perspective, unsure of where you stand, but deeply aware that it matters. Psychologically, this restraint unsettles people because it denies them instant clarity. Humans crave to categorize, ally or opponent, approval or rejection. When you delay your opinion, you keep others in limbo, forcing them to question themselves, to over-explain, or to reveal more in the hope of swaying you. This hesitation places you above the conversation, the silent judge whose verdict carries greater weight precisely because it isn't handed out easily. The emotional effect is striking. Your silence makes people anxious, amplifying the value of whatever you eventually say. A single measured comment from you will outweigh the endless chatter of others, simply because it comes after deliberate thought. Even in disagreements, withholding your stance until others have revealed theirs gives you the advantage of knowledge. You strike last and therefore strike hardest. This pattern also builds intrigue. People begin to wonder what you're really thinking, attributing depth and wisdom to your silence. The less you reveal up front, the more they respect what you finally share. To withhold opinions is to command not just attention, but anticipation. It makes others wait, and in that waiting, they hand you their respect. Unpredictable engagement levels. Unpredictable engagement levels are a psychological tactic that keeps people off balance, never allowing them to feel fully secure in how much of you they truly have. One moment, you are fully present, intense eye contact, sharp attention, a rush of energy, and the next, you withdraw, becoming distant, distracted, or cold. This push and pull creates a roller coaster of emotions that hooks people deeper because unpredictability is addictive. The human brain craves patterns, and when it cannot find one, it obsesses, replaying interactions, trying to decode the mystery of your shifting presence. The power of this tactic lies in scarcity and inconsistency. When your attention feels rare and uncertain, people value it more. A burst of focus from you feels like sunlight breaking through clouds, and they chase that warmth, hoping to experience it again. But when you withdraw, the absence gnaws at them, stirring insecurity and desire. This imbalance makes others invest more effort, trying to win back the version of you that once gave them intensity. Psychologically, unpredictable engagement forces others into submission. In groups, it makes you the center of gravity because people never know when you'll lean in with force or fade into silence. In relationships, it fosters obsession as your inconsistent presence lingers in the mind like an unsolved riddle. In negotiations, it destabilizes opponents, leaving them unsure of where they stand, which pushes them to overcompensate. The emotional effect is raw and consuming. People can resist consistency, but they cannot resist unpredictability. It digs into their psyche, making them restless, making them crave more. By controlling when you give and when you take away, you command not just respect, but obsession. Recognizing without overvaluing others. Recognizing without overvaluing others is a psychological tactic that commands respect by striking the perfect balance between acknowledgement and restraint. Most people, when they give recognition, go overboard, lavishing praise, inflating egos, and placing themselves in a position of weakness by appearing too eager to please. But when you recognize someone's efforts or qualities in a measured, understated way, you validate them just enough to satisfy their need for acknowledgement without surrendering your authority. Psychologically, humans crave recognition. It is tied to identity, self-worth, and the hunger for significance. But when recognition is excessive, it loses its power, and worse, it shifts the dynamic, making the giver seem dependent on the receiver's approval. By keeping your recognition calm, brief, and matter-of-fact, you reverse that power exchange. Your validation becomes scarce, and scarcity always increases value. People begin to crave your acknowledgement because it feels rare and meaningful. This tactic also plays into hierarchy. When you recognize without overvaluing, you position yourself above, as though you are bestowing approval rather than seeking favor. Leaders, influencers, and manipulators use this to reinforce authority. Others feel seen but not equal. It creates a subtle tension. They are grateful for your recognition, yet they continue to seek more, adjusting themselves to earn it. The emotional impact is sharp. Understated recognition makes people feel respected but still hungry, validated but not fully satisfied. They remember it, replay it, and try harder for your approval next time. By refusing to overvalue them, you retain control of the exchange, making your rare acknowledgement not just a compliment, but a form of psychological currency. Keeping facial neutrality in conflict. Keeping facial neutrality in conflict is a psychological pattern that commands power by refusing to reveal what others desperately want to see, your emotions. In moments of tension, most people crack. Their faces betray anger, fear, irritation, or anxiety, and in that betrayal, they hand control of the situation to whoever notices it first. But when your face remains unreadable, calm, and steady, you become an enigma. No one can measure your weakness. No one can predict your next move, and that uncertainty gives you the upper hand. The human brain is wired to scan faces for cues. Micro-expressions expose hidden feelings, and we instinctively rely on them to gauge danger, safety, or opportunity. When your expression reveals nothing, you disrupt this primal process. People grow uncomfortable because they cannot map your inner state, and in that discomfort, they lose balance. They second-guess themselves, wondering if you are plotting, judging, or entirely unaffected. This psychological void makes your presence heavier, even intimidating. In arguments, neutrality robs your opponent of satisfaction. They cannot feed off your anger, they cannot celebrate your frustration, and they cannot weaken you through emotional provocation. In negotiations, it makes you appear unshakable, as though every offer is beneath your notice until you choose otherwise. In leadership, it projects authority, the image of someone who is always in control, even in chaos. The emotional effect is chilling. People feel smaller when they cannot read you, as though they are battling a wall of silence instead of a person. Keeping facial neutrality in conflict makes you untouchable because it denies others the very fuel they need to fight you. Allowing others to reveal too much. Allowing others to reveal too much is a psychological strategy rooted in restraint and silence. Most people cannot tolerate gaps in conversation. They rush to fill silence with words, often oversharing without realizing it. By staying quiet, by asking small but pointed questions, and then leaning back, you create a space where others feel compelled to keep talking. In that flood of words, they expose their motives, weaknesses, and insecurities while you sit in control, gathering information without giving anything away. Psychologically, this works because humans crave validation. When someone is listening attentively but not responding much, the speaker feels an unconscious need to keep proving themselves, to earn acknowledgement, to impress. They go deeper than they intended, offering details they would normally guard. You become the mirror that reflects nothing, and in that void, they paint their entire picture. This imbalance shifts power to you. They are exposed while you remain unreadable. The emotional effect is profound. When people realize they've revealed too much, embarrassment sets in, and that embarrassment deepens their respect for you. They feel vulnerable in your presence, acutely aware that you know more about them than they know about you. This dynamic creates subtle authority. You are the keeper of their secrets, the observer who cannot be easily manipulated because you've already seen their unguarded side. By mastering the art of letting others talk themselves into exposure, you command respect through silence. You don't press, you don't pry, you simply create the stage where they unravel on their own, while you stand as the silent figure who knows more than they ever intended you to. Disguising true intentions. Disguising true intentions is a dark psychological tactic that cloaks your real motives beneath layers of ambiguity, forcing others to operate in uncertainty while you move with hidden purpose. Humans crave clarity because predictability brings comfort. When you deny them that comfort, when your words suggest one thing while your actions subtly suggest another, you create an atmosphere of intrigue and unease. People become hyper-focused on trying to read you, yet never quite succeed, and in that confusion, you gain control. The power of this technique lies in concealment. By never fully revealing your goals, you keep others guessing, making them hesitant to challenge or oppose you. They don't know whether you're an ally or a rival, whether you want something from them or nothing at all. That uncertainty creates caution, and caution gives you leverage. Even a slight smile at the wrong moment, a vague answer, or an unexpected withdrawal can send their minds spinning with theories, each one giving you more power than the truth ever could. Psychologically, disguising intentions builds mystique. You appear layered, unreadable, someone who cannot be pinned down. In negotiations, it forces the other side to overplay their hand, trying to guess at your position. In relationships, it fuels fascination as people project their own desires and fears into the blank spaces you leave behind. In leadership, it commands respect because mystery often feels like mastery. The emotional impact is consuming. People are unsettled by what they cannot predict, yet irresistibly drawn to solve it. By hiding your true motives behind a mask of calm ambiguity, you turn curiosity into a weapon, leaving them chasing shadows while you move with silent precision. Using rhetorical questions. Using rhetorical questions is a psychological strategy that commands respect by forcing others to think rather than simply listen. Unlike direct statements, which can be challenged or dismissed, rhetorical questions bypass defenses and slip directly into the listener's mind. They don't demand an answer from you, they demand an answer from them, and in that silent search for meaning, you seize control of their thoughts. Psychologically, rhetorical questions are powerful because they create an illusion of autonomy. Instead of telling someone what to believe, you make them arrive at the conclusion themselves. The human brain resists being lectured, but it cannot resist solving a question once it's asked. Even when left unanswered, the mind continues working, replaying the question long after the conversation ends. That lingering effect makes your influence feel deeper and more lasting. Rhetorical questions also carry emotional weight. A sharp question at the right moment can spark doubt, inspire reflection, or unsettle confidence. In arguments, it can dismantle the opponent's stance without you ever raising your voice. In persuasion, it can make people feel as if the truth was their own discovery, not something imposed on them. This psychological trick transforms you from speaker to architect of thought. The brilliance of rhetorical questions lies in their elegance. They require fewer words, yet command more impact. They place you in the role of guide, mentor, or challenger, while the listener becomes the one doing the mental work, and the one who directs another's thinking without force earns respect, not through dominance, but through mastery of subtle control. delivering understatements. Delivering understatements is a dark psychological pattern that commands attention through restraint, turning simplicity into dominance. In a culture where people exaggerate to impress, dramatize to persuade, and over-explain to prove themselves, understatement slices through the noise with unsettling power. By deliberately downplaying your words, you create an aura of mystery and authority, forcing others to read between the lines and amplify your message in their own minds. The brilliance of understatement lies in its contrast. When someone expects a dramatic response but hears only calm, measured words, the silence beneath those words becomes deafening, saying it's manageable when others would panic, or it's decent when something is extraordinary, unsettles people because it leaves them unsure how much you truly know or how much more you are withholding. That gap in certainty magnifies your influence because the human brain hates ambiguity and fills it with imagination. Psychologically, understatement shifts the burden of meaning onto others. They interpret, they project, they assign depth to what you said, often making your words sound more powerful than they were. It also creates the sense that you are never trying too hard, never chasing approval. Leaders, manipulators, and master negotiators use understatement to project calm control, to make victory seem effortless, and to subtly diminish the efforts of others by minimizing their impact. The emotional effect is piercing. People feel both intrigued and disarmed by your restraint. They lean in, trying to decipher your true intentions, and in doing so, they give you more attention than someone shouting their greatness ever could. Understatement doesn't beg to be heard. It forces others to make it louder in their own minds. Commanding stillness during confrontation. Commanding stillness during confrontation is one of the most unnerving displays of psychological dominance. In heated moments, people expect movement, raised voices, flailing hands, shifting posture, restless energy. When instead you remain utterly still, unflinching, and composed, you create a tension so thick it forces everyone else to break before you do. That stillness radiates a message stronger than any words. You are unshaken, untouchable, and in control of the storm. Psychologically, humans interpret movement as nervous energy. Fidgeting, pacing, or exaggerated gestures reveal agitation and insecurity. Stillness, by contrast, signals mastery. It mirrors the predator in the wild, silent, patient, and ready. When you hold your ground without a twitch, others instinctively feel the weight of your presence. They sense danger in your calm because nature has taught us that the most powerful strike often comes from the quietest stand. The emotional impact is undeniable. Your opponent grows unsettled when their provocation fails to rattle you. Their anger begins to feel small, their theatrics embarrassing in comparison to your composure. Observers shift their respect to you because people admire the one who doesn't lose control when challenged. Your stillness becomes its own form of intimidation, making them question whether you know something they don't, whether your silence hides power they cannot measure. Every confrontation is a battle of control, and stillness is your weapon. By refusing to flinch, you force others to confront their own lack of composure. The louder they grow, the more foolish they seem against your silence. In that imbalance, respect flows to you, the immovable force they cannot shake. Reframing criticism calmly. Reframing criticism calmly is a psychological tactic that flips an attack into an opportunity for dominance, all without raising your voice. Most people react defensively to criticism, snapping back, justifying themselves, or showing visible discomfort. But when you meet criticism with calm composure, you instantly seize control of the interaction. Instead of resisting the blow, you absorb it, twist it, and return it with a perspective that strengthens you while leaving your critic disarmed. The power of this tactic lies in emotional contrast. Criticism is usually delivered with sharpness, expecting resistance or insecurity in response. When you refuse to react with emotion, and instead say something like, "That's one way to see it," or "Interesting perspective," before reframing the point, you undermine the critic's intention. Their weapon fails to wound you, and worse, it becomes fuel for your authority. Calm reframing projects unshakable self-assurance, signaling to everyone watching that you are not only immune to attacks, but skilled at turning them into stepping stones. Psychologically, this tactic forces your critic into discomfort. They expect a fight. Instead, you give them stillness, and stillness is unnerving. The lack of reaction makes them second-guess themselves, while your reframing redirects the narrative. In groups, it makes you appear rational, controlled, and wise, qualities that command instant respect. The emotional impact is undeniable. Your calmness in the face of attack magnifies your presence, while their criticism dissolves into irrelevance. Instead of looking like the target, you look like the authority. By refusing to be shaken, you teach others a silent lesson. Your value is not dictated by judgment, and your power is untouchable. Expecting respect without demanding it. Expecting respect without demanding it is one of the most commanding psychological patterns, because it radiates quiet authority without ever needing to plead or prove. When you carry yourself as though respect is the natural order of things, others unconsciously adjust their behavior to match that expectation. Demanding respect exposes insecurity, but expecting it communicates that it is already yours by default. This subtle difference shifts the entire dynamic, making people feel that to treat you with anything less would be unthinkable. Psychologically, humans read cues from posture, tone, and behavior to determine hierarchy. A person who apologizes excessively, over-explains, or seeks validation teaches others to treat them as lesser. But one who stands tall, speaks calmly, and refuses to grovel creates an unspoken rule. This is someone you respect. That expectation alone reshapes interactions. Voices soften, interruptions fade, and deference emerges without a single request. The brilliance of this tactic is its silence. By never asking for respect, you make it appear as though it naturally belongs to you, and people internalize that belief. This is why true leaders often don't need to shout, threaten, or prove their worth. Their very demeanor sets the standard. Those who expect respect without demanding it create an invisible boundary, one that others feel instinctively, as if crossing it would diminish themselves. The emotional weight is profound. People admire those who do not beg for recognition because it reflects inner strength. To expect respect calmly, without arrogance or desperation, is to embody self-worth so deeply that others have no choice but to mirror it. And in that mirroring, respect becomes inevitable. Subtle tone shifts to control mood. Subtle tone shifts to control mood is a psychological pattern that manipulates emotions without the listener even realizing it. The human voice carries far more power than the words themselves. It carries energy, dominance, reassurance, or fear depending on how it's used. By adjusting your tone deliberately, softening it to calm, sharpening it to intimidate, slowing it to ground, or quickening it to stir urgency, you can steer the emotional state of others with invisible strings. Psychologically, people are highly suggestible to vocal cues. A calm, steady tone in chaos convinces others that the situation is under control, even if it isn't. A sudden drop in volume forces people to lean in, giving you their undivided attention. A slight rise in intensity can make your words feel urgent, sparking adrenaline and compliance. These tonal shifts bypass conscious logic, striking the subconscious where emotions live. The listener doesn't analyze why they feel different. They just do. This technique works because tone is primal. Long before humans had complex language, we communicated safety, threat, and belonging through sound. That ancient wiring still governs us today. By shifting your tone strategically, you trigger instincts, comfort, submission, excitement, or fear. Leaders use it to inspire, Manipulators use it to seduce, and interrogators use it to break resistance. The emotional effect is magnetic. People will remember not just what you said, but how you made them feel. When you master subtle tone shifts, your voice becomes more than sound. It becomes a weapon. You dictate the mood of the moment, and in doing so, you dictate the minds of those who listen. Pausing after being challenged. Pausing after being challenged is a psychological maneuver that flips the power dynamic in an instant. Most people, when confronted, rush to defend themselves, blurting explanations, raising their voice, scrambling to protect their pride. But when you meet a challenge with silence, when you let the words hang in the air and take your time before responding, you create a pressure so heavy that the challenger begins to question themselves. That pause is not weakness. It is dominance disguised as patience. Psychologically, silence after a challenge denies the aggressor what they crave most, a reaction. They expect you to fight back, to stumble, to justify yourself. Instead, your pause throws the weight of discomfort back onto them. Their mind fills the silence with insecurity. Did they catch me overstepping? Do they have an advantage I can't see? Why aren't they rattled? The longer the pause, the more their certainty dissolves. The emotional effect is striking. Observers feel the shift immediately. You appear unbothered, calm, and composed, while the challenger looks impatient, insecure, even desperate. When you finally do respond, your words carry amplified weight because they were preceded by stillness. The silence frames your answer as deliberate, not reactive, and that perception alone makes people respect you more. This pattern is powerful because it transforms a defensive moment into an offensive one. By pausing, you force the challenger to bear the discomfort they intended for you. The silence becomes a weapon, one that exposes their impatience while magnifying your composure. Respect flows naturally to the one who controls the tempo, and the pause ensures that tempo always belongs to you. Speaking as if conclusions are obvious. Speaking as if conclusions are obvious is a psychological tactic that bends perception because it disguises persuasion as self-evidence. Instead of presenting arguments as debatable points, you deliver them as though they are undeniable facts, so natural and unquestionable that challenging them feels foolish. When you speak this way, you bypass resistance, making people feel as though agreement is the only rational path forward. It is not about what you say, but how you frame it, as a conclusion already reached, rather than a claim needing proof. The power of this technique lies in confidence. Humans are drawn to certainty, and when you present ideas as obvious truths, people hesitate to argue. You remove the frame of debate, replacing it with inevitability. Phrases like, "Of course, this is the only solution," or "Naturally, that's the outcome," plant seeds in the subconscious, creating the sense that the matter has already been settled. Others may not even notice when they start nodding along, aligning themselves with your certainty. Psychologically, this tactic works because most individuals fear being perceived as ignorant. If you act as though something is self-evident, few will risk questioning it and exposing themselves as the one who doesn't get it. In groups, this makes you the anchor voice, the one others orbit. In negotiations, it corners opponents because rejecting an obvious conclusion forces them to defend their stance against the weight of collective assumption. The emotional impact is subtle yet powerful. People feel swept into your narrative, convinced not by force, but by inevitability. By speaking as if conclusions are obvious, you transform opinion into authority and suggestion into silent command. Making people seek your approval. Making people seek your approval is a psychological strategy that flips the power dynamic in any interaction. Instead of chasing validation, you become the source of it, and others begin to shape their behavior around earning your acknowledgement. This is not about openly withholding praise. It is about creating an atmosphere where your recognition feels scarce, deliberate, and profoundly valuable. When people crave your approval, they unconsciously elevate you, placing you in a position of authority. Psychologically, humans are wired to desire acceptance, especially from figures who appear confident, independent, and difficult to impress. When you remain selective with your approval, others start to work harder to gain it. They adjust their words, their actions, even their personalities, subtly bending themselves toward what they think will win your recognition. The uncertainty of whether they've earned it keeps them hooked, returning again and again to seek that rare validation. This tactic creates a powerful loop. The less freely you give approval, the more valuable it becomes, and the more valuable it becomes, the more people chase it. In relationships, this can lead to deep attachment, as your occasional nod, smile, or rare compliment feels intoxicating. In leadership or influence, it can drive loyalty, with others working tirelessly to meet your unspoken standards. The emotional weight of this pattern is immense. When someone is made to seek your approval, they place you in the role of judge, teacher, or leader. Their self-worth begins to intertwine with your recognition, and that dependence fuels respect, fear, or even obsession. You no longer ask for power. It is given to you, one craving glance at a time.